Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, and any number of things people call me. Robert Meyer Burnett here once again for John Campea and the John Campea Show. And he has graciously allowed me the opportunity to answer some questions from you, one of the best audiences on YouTube. So we're just going to jump right into it. I'm going to start. And it's Frankie Gouge is here. Sends in a super chat. Jimmy Woo can kick ass. Yes, he can. He can also do magic, which is something to aspire to. Frankie Gouge sends in another super chat and says, commercial. Me trying to opening packaging on most Amazon products. One day will find me dead trying to get one of theirs open someday. Yeah, you know, I don't like that. Too many Amazon products. Does your house fill with Amazon boxes? Because mine does. I don't know what to do with them. I mean, we try and recycle them, but what are you going to do? Lucky Dragon sends in a super chat and says, am I alone thinking the episode asked a lot of questions and answered very few? Not a ton happened until the end either. Probably my least favorite episode. Really? See, I thought we were getting a lot of all of the exchanges that people were having, like Pietro having with Wanda or Peter having with Wanda. We were learning a lot of really interesting stuff. Like, Peter knows what Wanda's doing. Like, Peter knows everything that's happening and still is from a different universe, not our universe. There was a lot of strange things happening. Agnes and Vision, everything that was going on inside the Sword base. I think there was more going on than you might know. Frankie Gouge sends in another super chat and says, if they ever want to remake Ace Ventura, Evans Peter would be perfect. He kind of would be, Evans Peter. I thought so too. That's a really good. I could see that happening, especially with his performance on this latest episode. Isaiah Campbell sent in a super chat and said, I know this episode was supposed to be in the 90s, but I got such a Malcolm in the Middle vibe. Give me Billy in the Middle ASAP. Yes, I'm young. Laugh out loud. Yeah, I mean, what did Malcolm in the Middle go into? He went into the mid-aughts, right? So definitely. I agree with you for sure. Steve Koonin sends in a super chat and says, hi, John. First time writing in for the Netherlands. Well, thank you. I'm a big fan of the Dutch, by the way. I've been to Amsterdam. I also love Dutch movies, not just Paul Verhoeven movies, but Fons Rodemaker. Really like Monique van de Ven, Renee Stausendijk. I don't know if I pronounced those names correctly, but they were actresses. I met both of them, actually. I think they're mashing Nightmare and Mephisto together. Adaption, right? Who have been enabling Wanda. She seems to be hazy it's too hazy for it to be just her. Over or under 60% we'll see an Avenger next week. I'm counting down the days till the next episode. It's so amazing and addictive. Thank you for these days with the community. It helps a lot this year. Well, Steve, I got to tell you, man, I think they kind of have to bring in an Avenger at this point. Like, with the Hex getting exponentially larger, I think it's time to call in the big guns. I would imagine if Stephen Strange does not show up, there's going to be maybe not Hell to pay, maybe Dormammu to pay. I don't know, maybe Mephisto to pay. But they've got to do something. I mean, I really do think that it's time. It's time to call in an Avenger. A fan of Peanuts sent in a super chat and says, definitely Malcolm in the Middle vibes with the talking to the camera from her kids' stuff from the 2000s. Oh, yeah, someone is feeding off her kids' magic. I think so, too. Definitely Malcolm in the Middle vibes, but someone is definitely feeding off these kids' magic. Both of them. Ian Lewis sends in a super chat and says, with the expansion of the Rift and Monica may be dying, do you think only the strongest survive and turn into mutants? I'm not convinced that this is how the world gets mutants. I think that Monica Rambeau was necessarily not referring to herself, but dying, but she's seen enough charts to know because her mom obviously died of cancer. But maybe she's going to become, obviously her superpowers will manifest, I think, and we'll move forward. Definitely, I mean, I think she's been set up from the very beginning. Well, at least from episode 4. So 3 episodes ago to become powerful. We shall see. Hank Jones sent in a $4.99 super chat and says, so either Vision can't survive outside the Hex, or she made it so hard to get through it that it started ripping him apart. I don't think he can survive outside the Hex. I think it's a manifestation. I don't think it's really Vision. Michael Giles sent in a super chat and said, the home video intro part was an Alf pull. It totally kind of was, wasn't it? Yep, so they're mixing and matching their sitcom eras. Mr. Hank Dunn sent in a super chat and said, I think that it's the body of the Fox X-Men Quicksilver, but has the MCU Quicksilver mind and soul. Well, that's interesting, but here's the thing. How would they know in the MCU universe? I know we're going to get the multiverse, but how would anyone know from that reality who Evan Peters was? Who that Quicksilver was? How would they know? Because that Quicksilver is positioned so differently in the Fox X-Men universe as he is in the MCU universe. So, very different characters, all of that. D. Wild sends in 2 super chats, actually. 3. Did you catch Wanda repeat kick-ass after Tommy forcibly said it, as in her role, her real bro, played by Evan Taylor Johnson, starred in a movie in our real world? Are she really breaking the fourth wall? Also, the episode is a blend of 90s and aughts depicted by Marquis. Wanda couldn't maintain with all the children she needed to add to the show, so she had to blend decades as a result, a side effect, much like residents on the edge of town spread thin. Ooh, I like that idea. Yeah, that she's using so much power that, I thought that the people just standing there was so creepy. And I think you're onto something there. I absolutely think so. We shall see. But I think, yes, she's overextended. Sin Vendetta sent in a super chat and says, so, as Vision is walking closer to the barrier, all Westview residents are frozen except Agnes. She can still move. She doesn't appear to be bound to this world like everyone else is. Good catch. I think you might be right about that, but I don't know. Sin Vendetta sends in another super chat and says, also, I love this episode. Favorite one by far. From the Malcolm Middle opening to Evan Peters having me in literal stitches. Easily the funniest episode of the series. Oh, I agree with you. Evan Peters was great. I liked the way they went with that character. A little bit different than we saw in the X-Men universe, but hilarious. Loved it. Benjamin Mason sends in a super chat and says, the more I continue to watch this show, the more it's hard to believe that something else is controlling the situation. She freezes everyone. I know. You know what? Every time I watch an episode of this show, I'm not sure what to believe. I don't know. And I go back and forth. I'm like, is she being controlled? Is she doing all this? Or have we been overthinking this thing? Also, I just hope that they explain, this whole situation is so wacky. Like, how do you end it? Like, well, I mean, I have no idea how this is all going to end and play out. And I kind of love the show for that. I have no idea from one episode to the next where the show's going, or I really don't. So, which is great. It's been a long time since I've not really had an idea about what's really going on here. Benjamin Mason sends in a super chat and says, the more I continue to watch this show, the more it's hard to believe that someone else is controlling the situation. She freezes everyone. Well, just think about me reading that same question twice and think of me being controlled by Wanda herself. A fan of Peanuts sends in a super chat and says, what was your favorite part of this episode, John and Ann? Well, I don't know. And rank. This one tied with my favorite episode 5. I still say Agnes is part of the whole thing. I am not fooled. Well, you know what? I have to tell you, I don't think of it that way because it's one long story. So I don't really judge the episodes per episode. To me, it's all one narrative unfolding. And ultimately, I don't think I can judge it until I've seen it all unravel and where we wind up. But I think you're right. Agnes is part of the whole thing. I don't know how. Maybe she's being controlled, but I think you're right about that. Benjamin Mason sends in another super chat. What do you make of Agnes asking Vision if he's there to help and acting like he doesn't know what's going on, but in the same breath telling him he's dead? Well, I think that maybe that has something to say about the fact that Agnes, in whatever form, thinks that Vision's really Vision. Or like, how are you here? Asking, so she knows about the outside world and all that. It's very interesting. I think the Vision we're getting is not the real Vision. I think there's going to be a really sad moment where the Vision that we've been watching is going to realize he's dead and either dematerialize, vanish, or go away. And it's going to be a sad moment because he thinks he's alive. So if he ends up dying or drifting off, it's going to be Really sad. Rodney Jackson sends in a super chat and says, I'm calling Baron Mordo as a player in this. The Eat You Magic commercial immediately reminded me of him stealing Jonathan Pangborn's magic. Maybe. I think definitely that's something that, yes, perhaps Mordo, it makes sense that he would be in there. And that commercial was pretty damn wacky. Like I was on board with all of them, and then the eating the magic thing, I'm like, oh, this is new. This is different. Michael Martinez sends in a chat and says, hey, John and Anne, how meta was that episode? I loved how they used this episode to include the comic-accurate costumes, but how much more meta would it have been if Evan Peters donned his Days of Future Past Quicksilver outfit? Minds would have blown. Congrats on the new house, and happy 7 days until WandaVision episode 7. Where are we counting down? How far are we? How many hours left? I honestly can't wait, to be honest. I can't wait. But I think it was pretty cool seeing him in the classic Quicksilver costume. I did enjoy that. Al Rencha sends in a super chat and says, in this episode, Pietro mentioned nightmare a few times when speaking to Wanda. Coincidence? Or maybe could this just be a nightmare in disguise? He could be. But again, how would they know of the Marvel X-Men universe's existence? That's what I want to know. And it has to be tied into the multiverse. But here's the thing. Even the multiverse in the MCU doesn't necessarily mean it crosses over with the Fox iteration of X-Men. I mean, I want to know how this has happened. Are they going to give us an explanation for all this? I don't know. But, Nightmare could be an explanation, could explain it all. But, I mean, think about it. That means that if you think about it, does that mean that the Marvel Cinematic Universe can cross over with the Star Wars universe? I mean, it wouldn't be the Star Wars universe we know because that happened a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. But theoretically, if different studios and different iterations of Marvel, you can cross over with them, could you get back like Lou Ferrigno as the Hulk? I mean, what was real and what wasn't? It's very interesting. Frankie Gauss goes on to say, reminds me of some RPG computer games where the player Wanda has to be in the area for the NPCs, the non-player characters to activate. You might be onto something there. I definitely think you might be onto something there. Faux show. Murray Reich sends in a super chat and says, I was getting so excited seeing Evan Peters again, especially he was funny in this episode, but now he sounds like an imposter. How does he only know that Vision died once? Did Wanda tell him everything? I don't know. I think that the Evan Peters business, every word that comes out of his mouth is a clue and something we need to pay attention to. Call me crazy. But, yeah. Al Rencha sends in a super chat and says, hi, John and Ann. At this point, it's puzzling why Avengers are not there. I agree. I mean, remember, this is like all happening so quickly, and SWORD would want to keep their jurisdiction, but now they're going to have to call somebody in. They've completely lost control of the situation. At this point, it's puzzling why Avengers aren't there. How many do you think we could see by episode 8 or 9? Strange, Banner, Carol? Well, all three of them could have ties. I wouldn't be surprised if all three showed up at this point. Nothing surprises me about this show. Absolutely nothing. BW or Black and White Rosas sent a $10 super chat in. Hey, John and Ann, it seems to me that Feige is going by the old saying Roddy Piper used to use. Just when you think they have the answers, I change the questions. That was the vibe I got here. 100%. You think you know what's going on in the show, and then they just do something crazy. I mean, they've never shown us the NPCs. I love that. The NPCs just frozen. I mean, that was a new wrinkle, and that was scary and creepy, man. They're not afraid. I don't know what's going on. And that's the thing. Every time I watch an episode, I'm like, wait, what does this mean now? The Wonder One sent in a super chat and says, is Agnes just an innocent civilian? Is it an act? Oh, I don't think Agnes is an innocent civilian. I think maybe she is Agatha Harkness. I don't know. But she definitely knows more than she's letting on. For sure. I don't know if she's being manipulated, if she's doing the manipulating. I don't know. But she definitely knows more than she's letting on. Zach Roy sent in a super chat and says, hi, John. Pietro can't be a product of Wanda's reality like Vision, can he? Because he remembers his past outside Westview, unlike Vision. Weird. Yeah, it is all weird. The whole Evan Peters thing is really weird, and all it did in this last episode was deepen the weirdness. Deepen the weirdness. Yeah. Puma K says, why does WandaVision make me feel like I'm on drugs? It's like the old commercial. This is your brain, and they crack open the egg. This is your brain is the egg. They crack open the egg, and they put it in the frying pan, and the egg's frying. This is your brain on drugs. I agree with you. I mean, you're following the show. It's so weird and surreal. I mean, they're definitely pushing the boundaries of weirdness for the MCU. I want to see what's going to happen because they're going to have to pull it back and make it work in universe. It's going to be really interesting to see how it all ends. I don't know. It kind of does make me feel like on DMT or something, right? Chad Caesar sends in the super chat and says, the commercial was about how all of this started. Wanda is the boy and the shark is the devil. Wanda mentions being really lonely before. Oh, I like this. Really lonely before all this. The islands represent loneliness. The shark says it got better by feasting on your magic. The devil is using Wanda to feed his own powers. Chad, I think there's definitely something to that. Maybe if it's not Mephisto, it's somebody else. But absolutely. I mean, I think that commercial was really telling. And it was really creepy how that poor kid just dies and deteriorates, turns into a skeleton. I mean, man, is that Wanda's fate? Is that what's going to happen to her? BW Rosas is back and says, folks have been speculating that Wanda has a split personality similar to Gollum's in Lord of the Rings. This may explain her change in tone in the series. Agree? Definitely a possibility. I think maybe some of her doesn't really know what's going on and other parts of her do. Obviously, like when she came out of the Hex and confronted Sword, she was completely in her right mind. She's like, stay away from me. I know what I'm doing. I'm living out my best life or whatever, and go home. The change of clothes. I mean, she looked like she was in her Avengers garb and she was pissed. So I think you could be right about that. There's definitely some kind of a split personality going on. A note from John. Thank you, AS. This is a note from John. AS sends in a $50 super chat. Well, first of all, let me also add to that note from John. Thank you so much for the generous support of the channel. We very much appreciate it. I appreciate it. John appreciates it. I know Ann appreciates it. But thank you very much for supporting the channel in this way. It means a great deal. So, that said, AS goes on and says, so it appears that the radiation from the bubble is going to trigger mutations. But isn't that radiation the same as the stones and the quantum realm? So all of these are potential catalysts for mutations or cancer, i.e. Jane Foster. Very good point. And obviously, in this past episode, Monica, they were looking at her charts and talking about how her DNA was being rewritten, and she mentions how she'd seen so many charts because of her mother. I think this is definitely part of something that's going on. Again, there's so many moving parts in all of this. I mean, when they threw that line in, they were talking about her DNA being rewritten. I'm like, wait a minute, is everybody's DNA getting rewritten? And what does that mean? I honestly, to be honest, I don't want this to be the catalyst for mutants in the MCU. It's all too weird. I mean, in a way, it's too fantastical. I don't know what's going to happen, but it does kind of bothers me. I don't want it to be so fantastical. Brandon, is it Nopey or Nope? Brandon, Nope or Nopey? Says, twins survive past WandaVision, Young Avengers. I think they will. I think they're going to age up a little bit more. Maybe not, but I think they will. And I think you're absolutely right. They are, in fact, part of the Young Avengers. Well, they're Speed and Wiccan. Juno Faulkner sends in a super chat and says, I don't know anything anymore. Throws up hands in frustration. But isn't it great that we don't? I mean, 6 episodes in, and we're like, wait, what? What? Fantastic. Love it. Sadath Alam sends in a super chat and says, Yo magic equals Wanda magic hex. Without magic, you die. I think there's definitely, Sadath, something to that. Again, I don't presume to know. I tune in every week and I'm like, what's going to happen now? Every one of these 6 episodes has just left me with many, many, many more questions and few answers. AS sends in another super chat. Oh, this is one of 2. Hang on a second. Let me read your super chat all the way again. So it appears that the radiation from the bubble is going to trigger mutations, but isn't that radiation the same as the stones in the quantum realm? So all of these are potential catalysts for mutations or cancer. So if the stones give off radiation that was similar, then each one of the snaps could have started to trigger mutations. Ooh, and the creation of mutants. I like that. I like the idea that maybe Thanos was the actual snap, the blip that created mutants, and when people came back, they had the X gene in them, but it wasn't until Thanos' snap and they were the re-snapping or the blip at the end of the blip when everyone came back, people could have come back with mutations. I could buy into that. That would be easier to handle than having Wanda and this hex trigger it all, but I like that idea. I think it's a good idea. Isaiah Campbell sends in a super chat and says, "It just has to be Agnes, right? Laugh out loud. I strongly believe she was pretending with Vision. I always got the sense she's up to something. She always is up to something. I don't know, though. I mean, clearly there's more to her than meets the eye, because she was talking in that one episode to the neighbor across the street, our favorite Frankenstein monster, and they know, I think the two of them both know something's up. So BW Rosas sends in another super chat and says, "I don't know if anyone thought of this, but what if Hayward is tied to General Ross? It would explain his actions toward Wanda, similar to Ross's actions to Hulk." Could be. I mean, they could definitely know each other, and yeah, I absolutely think you're right there. The real question is Hayward a villain or not? Is he just doing his job? Because he started out, I thought he was a nice guy when we first met him in episode 4, and now he's just kind of a dick. So, Tyler V602 sends in a super chat and says, "Hey, John, love the show. Everyday listen. With the hex changing people's cells, that tells me two things. One, Monica becoming Photon, of course. And two, Wanda is responsible for the townspeople becoming mutants. Hints at the X-Men. Maybe, I mean, again, we have to know more. Like in Starship Troopers, do you want to know more? I do want to know more. I just don't know if that's how they're going to trigger mutants in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I don't know, but we're going to find out. Shane Gibber sends in a super chat and says, "Okay, John and Ann, over or under 30% we get a Spider-Man 3 trailer as the ending credits in the last episode." Ooh. I think we're going to get something in the last episode. I don't know if it's a trailer for Spider-Man 3. I think it's going to be another scene that definitely probably leads right into Spider-Man 3. So I think you're half right there. I don't think we're going to get the whole trailer. I think we're going to get a real scene, like some kind of a scene a real scene that links back to Spider-Man 3. I think you're absolutely right. Isaiah Campbell, 1 of 3, says, "Maybe we see the show end with Wanda still in the hex, more broken than before after losing her kids or Vision again. Is it far-fetched to think Wanda expands the hex into New York in Spider-Man 3, maybe towards the end of the film, leading into Doctor Strange to get involved in Doctor Strange 2, and maybe explains why there was no mention of the hex in Spider-Man 2 due to the hex still being small scale? Also want to say thanks, John and Ann, for doing the show weekly for everyone." Well, I want to say thanks to John and Ann for doing it too, because I get to read these questions for you. You know what? Let me say, Isaiah, remember that this takes place about 3 weeks after everybody comes back from the snap, and Spider-Man Far From Home is about 7.5 months after. So I think this hex situation is going to get resolved by the end of WandaVision, but I think that the ramifications, whatever happens at the end, whether it tears the fabric of reality, that's why we have J. Jonah Jameson in Far From Home. I think the ramifications are immense, extraordinary. I'm here for it. Lolo Nirg, is that it? Sword studying Vision's body, director Hayward showing up, hate, anger toward the super beings, possibly a future setup to introduce the Sentinels, seems fitting. Could very well be that. I could see that happening, or definitely tying in somehow. Colin Z sends in a super chat and says, "Wanda's Mind Stone powers of telepathy and telekinesis are distinct from the real magic practiced by Doctor Strange. The Yo Magic ad hints someone else's sorcery is at play." Could be, but remember, Wanda is a powerful... She's not really... I guess you can't call her a sorceress because she has different, like, reality powers, but she's one of the most powerful people in the Marvel Universe and one of the most dangerous. So maybe, but I don't know I think she wields her own powers, but I think definitely someone else's sorcery is at play. 100%. Matt Sanders sends in a super chat and says, "Hi, John. I thought Peter was being genuinely nice in ways, but could see him crack. Also, I live on Ellis Avenue, so I thought, what's beyond my street?" Yeah, I think you're right about that. I think that he's whatever he is, he's not everything he appears to be. I can't wait to find out what it all means. LOL Nierg. Nierg, is that what it is? Comes back with another super chat and says, This episode shows people outside Wanda's range are frozen. They can't eat, drink. Commercial suggests they will wither away unless the seal is broken. Ooh, that's interesting. Maybe. I mean, they have to do something. Unless do they wait till Wanda makes it over to that part of town when they can walk around and eat and take care of one another? I mean, that's an interesting observation. I didn't think about that, but you're right. A fan of Peanuts sends in a super chat and says, "Obviously, fake Quicksilver is nefariously culpable. Fake Quicksilver is nefariously culpable in some fashion. The commercial spoke volumes, and if Wanda is 90% of this, I still say Agnes is 1%. I agree. Yeah, I mean, obviously Quicksilver was not acting. He's certainly not an innocent, so we'll see where all of this winds up. Frank Bono sends in a super chat and says, Pietro is either Nightmare or Mephisto trying to get info out of Wanda on how she's creating this reality. They can't bring people back from the dead for some reason, so snatched Peters from a different universe. Someone bigger is at play. I completely agree with that. Completely agree, because they're going to have to explain how do they get him from a different universe. A fan of Peanuts sent in a super chat and says, Vision asks, where are all the children before and now they're all back? Yep, they're all back. No one seemed to say, where'd all these kids come from? A fan of Peanuts sends in another super chat and says, 100% Agnes is 1%, John. 100%. I like that. Yeah, but she's part of it somehow. I like that. 100% Agnes is 1%, John. 100%. KC McNatt, one of two, says, I'm still very suspect of Agnes. One, why was she the only person not frozen in that area by Ellis Avenue? And two, I think her main purpose was to tell Vision who he was and that he was dead, just so he would go out of the boundaries of Westview. I don't know what purpose that would serve her, but when she was put back under the hex, she looked like she knew where she was going when she didn't earlier. You might be right about that. That was a really bizarre scene. Like, did she know where Vision was going to put herself there? Like, how would she know that that was the edge of town that Vision was walking towards, you know? But she did know. So maybe it's all tied in together. Again, I love the fact that we're all speculating and we really don't know. We really don't know. Ob626 sends in a super chat and says, what the F was that commercial? Oh, I think that, like all these commercials, they have a much deeper meaning. The idea of yo magic, does it sustain you? No, it's burning you out from the inside, turning you into a beautiful rotting corpse that is left as a skeletal remains on an island. I think that metaphorically, there's a lot going on in that commercial, and none of it was good. And if you extrapolate further, maybe the commercials are the way of Wanda, the real Wanda, being able to get her own personality out there to hopefully send a message. I don't know. I still don't even know what the sitcoms are all about. It's crazy. Casey McNatt's back and sends in another super chat and says, last one from me. Had a chance to look at that commercial again, and I feel that it's saying that magic can't save you even if you are dead. Ooh, I like that. Could very well be. I think you might be right about that. Magic isn't the answer kind of a deal. Could be. That could very well be. Ryan Lohner sends in another super chat. I'm so happy for Darcy getting cast in her favorite show. Sometimes dreams come true. That is very funny. Darcy is now a cast member. I hope it'll be a bummer for her if she's just like stuck frozen on the outskirts of town, though. Or maybe she's a carny. You know, she's working the carnival now. Max Papanow sends in a super chat and says, hey, John and Ann, so do you think now might be a good time to call literally any Avengers to come deal with this mess? Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, Captain Marvel, laugh out loud. Love you guys. Max, it is time. It is time to call in the Avengers. It really is. Somebody, I mean, you know, my man My man Stephen Strange, come on. He really is the choice, right? I mean, while this hot toy Stephen Strange is clearly good at casting spells, somebody needs to show up. Somebody needs to show up and fix this. And my I think with how it's going, it's got to be Doctor Strange, who's gonna, right, Stephen? You could figure this shit out, right? I'm really hoping you do, because we need you to, buddy. We really need you to. I love those hot toys. So Max, let's bring on the Avengers. Francisco Valdez sends in a super chat and says, Pietro is being a little sus in this episode, in my opinion. Yes, I think so too. And it was weird. I mean, his characterization was strange. On one hand, like, he seemed to know everything about her and was kind of making little ribbing comments at her expense. Like, that was really interesting. So we'll see what happens. Jordan Smith sends in a super chat and says, do you think this will be the last time we see Evan Peters as Quicksilver? Since Wanda is making him look like that, she will eventually make him look like Aaron Taylor Johnson. I think Peters was that Luke cameo. No Professor S or Magneto. No, Jordan, there's something much bigger going on here, and I think we're going to get an Avengers cameo, but that really wouldn't be a cameo because the Avengers we know are around. They're not but I think we're going to get somebody even bigger. So I think we're going to get Avengers, maybe one, maybe two, but then we're going to get somebody else that we're going to be like, so I really do believe that. Francisco Valdez sends in a super chat and says, what are your speculations as to why the Evan Peters Quicksilver is in the MCU again? I don't know. That's the thing. I have no clue why they're in the MCU. It's a really odd way to play it, to be honest. Very odd way to play it because he's from a different universe, so there's theoretically nobody from our universe that would even know of his existence. So it has to be some kind of nefarious, somebody you can look through the multiverse and to have seen these things is the only explanation that I can come up with. I don't know how else it would work. So, yeah. A fan of Peanuts sends in a super chat and says, Agnes killed the dog to incite rage in the children. Agnes caused tension and argumentative strain to remove Vision in episodes 5 and 6. She wants Vision out and dead. Agreed. She's doing everything she can to remove Vision. They need to get anything that Wanda is attached to away from her so they can deal with the kids. I think that's what part of this Endgame is all about. Something along those lines. So we'll see. Jermaine Walker sends in a $50 super chat. Well, and John left a note here. He says, note from John, thank you, Jermaine. Jermaine, once again, thank you. There's no question here, sir, but thank you so much for supporting the channel in this way. It is very much appreciated. We all work hard here on the John Campea Show, doing all of these things and that we do, and to see this kind of support from viewers is very gratifying. So thank you very much, sir. Richard Ganther sends in a super chat and says, with the radiation in a previous, or with the radiation, what? With the question in a previous episode of what happens when the radiation levels increase, now Monica's cell change. My theory, the hex will cover the globe in an energy blast, and mutants are here. There's a lot of talk of that. I don't know how I would, I just think that kind of an event causing mutations for the universe, it seems so strange because if there's no history of mutants, the mutants go all the way back to like Apocalypse in ancient Egypt and things like that. The mutants have been here for so long. I mean, I wouldn't like the idea that Wolverine hasn't been alive for a very long period of time and fighting in all those wars he fought in. I wouldn't like it if, now Wolverine's here. It would just seem too, it wouldn't sit well with me. I don't know. Preston Bell sends in a super chat and says, wow, what an episode. The show keeps getting better. One thought, are the people standing still in the towns people that Wanda forgot about, or maybe they're on autopilot? I think it's something along those lines. I think they're there, but they're so far out of Wanda's influence or whatever that if they're not needed for something, they're not animated. They're not part of it. So, yeah. Preston Belson's in another super chat and says, also, you may still be right about Evan Peters not being Quicksilver, because suddenly the kids have these powers. Maybe it's because Wanda is giving it to them. Also, it could be the same for Peters. Well, Wiccan and Speed are right out of the comics. Those are two characters that were created like that in the comics, very similar, and they end up being members of the Young Avengers. So they're playing that, as they do with a lot of things in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They're looking right back to the comics to take their inspiration. Dan Ketchum sends in a super chat and says, that bubble will eventually cover the world, creating mutants as it does. By the way, that commercial was creepy as hell. Dan, you are right. But again, I just don't know if it's going to create mutants. I just think that mutants need to have a history. They can't just suddenly pop into existence because of one crazy event like this. I think that would shortchange the mutants, because I think they need a history. They need to be able to grow up, and they need to have time. And if they don't, if they're just people are created, well, here are the mutants. I just don't think that would be that great, to be honest. Let's see. And the commercial was creepy as hell. Cam K sends in a super chat and says, hey, John, quick update. I actually may be back on board the Mephisto train. Quicksilver saying to the boys, unleash hell, demon spawn. It's a bit much. Or they might be playing with us. But yeah, definitely could. Because they were, demon spawn. Maybe he's speaking literally. Because literally, they are demon spawn, and let's unleash some hell. It is a bit much, though. MCV Multi-Comic Verse sends in a super chat and says, when Pietro called the boys Hellspawn, I cried inside foreseeing this potential heartbreaking ending. Well, if you go by the comics, they do get to stick around, but they might not stick around in this iteration. Cam K sends in a super chat and says, also about Agnes, I was slowly starting to think she's more good until I realized in the music intro, her back had the word naughty written on it. Yep, she's definitely naughty. She has a little bit of the devil in her, I think. How much of the devil she has in her, we'll have to see. Michael Bradley sends in a super chat and says, hello, John. When Peter made the crack about losing her husband again, I was stunned. He knows more than just when he entered the town. Oh, yeah, he knows a lot. He arrived in Westview with a lot of information. He knows a lot of stuff, and I think the reveal is going to be great, worth the wait. Suthius, hello, Suthius, sent in a super chat and says, hey, guys, Wanda, mi mucho gusto. Vision, chili con carne. Laugh out loud. I don't know why, but that interaction between the two had me in stitches. Great chemistry. It was also great writing. The two of them are great together, and all their dialogue is so gold. So gold. It's really very, very good stuff. Cam K sends in a super chat and says, one last thing, Agnes may be a really good actress. Reason for thinking that is when she was unawakened by Vision, she ceased to remain frozen. Yes, she's a great actress, and you're right. And what does that mean? I mean, it's funny because everybody's keyed in onto the methodology of it all. Like, if so-and-so is touched, how does that work? And they go and they come. It's very interesting. You're right, though. You're right. Suthius sent in a super chat and says, okay, now we can call upon Strange to help. I hope so. Seeing how big the Hex got, I wonder what Monica would be able to do once back inside. Perhaps gain powers and with Wanda's or with Vision's help put a stop to Wanda. Maybe if they can. I mean, the funny thing is they don't. They're sort of as in the dark as we are. They don't know this. Can you imagine if you're them? Like if you're working for SWORD and you get called into the situation, you're trying to make sense of it all. Like we're watching sitcoms through the ages, and what's going on here? Why these kids that didn't exist now they exist? What is happening? I mean, this is up to the level of maybe not Thanos snapping the universe away, or half the universe away, but this is some weird ass shit. And it's certainly not like, oh, I've got a super soldier serum, so I have super strength. There's so much weirdness here on so many different levels, multiple forms of weirdness, that I can't wait to have it all explained. And people are going to still be like, wait, what? It's so weird. Cam K says, P.S. Those people are frozen, not asleep. The teardrop confirms they're conscious as well, which ups the creepy factor tenfold. Cam K, I couldn't agree more. The tear was so great. I mean, all those people know. They know. Brandon Carter sends in a super chat and says, my guess is the Mind Stone must be in play in some capacity. Otherwise, would Vision not immediately break into pieces rather than the slow decomp we got? I don't think so. I think that's just there for show. I think it's just there for show. I don't necessarily think it is the Mind Stone. At least the Mind Stone is not on Vision for real. I don't think so. Suthius sends in a super chat and says, it really shows Vision's character. Even while breaking up and dying, he's focused on asking for help for the people. Stark contrast between him and Wanda. Yeah, I think Wanda's gone really around the bend. Trashy Gamer sends in a super chat and says, Ultron told Wanda in Age of Ultron she would tear apart the Avengers from the inside. Could he be behind this? I wouldn't put it past them, Trashy Gamer. Could very well be. Ultron's revenge. That could be interesting. Could be. Daniel Quall sends in a super chat and says, I think it's curious that we saw what happened to every other person and object that got caught up in the Hex and what they turned into, except Darcy. I know. We shall see. Arun Ananda says, hi, John. First time tipping. Well, thank you, Arun. I think 90% Doctor Strange shows up in WandaVision and Nightmares disguised as Quicksilver. What are your thoughts? Arun, I think you might be very close on the money with that. I think Doctor Strange showing up. I think Nightmare, I don't know if it's Nightmare, but I think somebody is certainly disguised as Evan Peters' Quicksilver. I do. I totally believe that. It would have to be. But still, how does somebody in the Marvel Universe know that the X-Men universe exists? They have to be able to traverse dimensions to get that information, unless they're just looking into different dimensions through some kind of a viewer. Maybe that's what Sword's been doing. Sword's figured out one of the things that Darcy figured out was she found out that they're monitoring the multiverse. Somehow they figured that out. Maybe that's how they were able, somebody was able to get Evan Peters out there. I don't know. Luis Armando Colon Suarez says, I might be wrong, but did it seem that Evan Peters was interrogating Wanda to see how she started everything? Could he be the real one that infiltrated? I completely agree with that. He was absolutely questioning her and allowing her or not allowing her to know. Totally right. You're absolutely right about that. Bradley Angst sends in Bradley. Thank you so much for generously supporting the channel that way. Bradley Angst. I love that. You're Angst. Bradley Angst. Agnes was a misdirect in this episode completely. Notice that Vision discovered frozen townspeople before Agnes, and when he talked to them, no one would respond, but Agnes did before he even used his mind power. Devils in the details. Oh, I totally agree with you. That was all very, very strange, very, very weird. So I agree. I agree. And the devil is in the details in this show. And I think once we go back and look at it, I want to go watch the show again. When it gets to the end, I'm totally going to go and watch it over again and look at all the, look for all the clues and the details. I can't wait. Again, thank you for generously supporting the channel. Mike Schwenk says, after this episode, I'm guessing the guy Monica is going to get us Reed Richards, and it's John Krasinski. Feige introduced the Fantastic Four is in production. How great would that be? I mean, I think people would go bananas if Krasinski was introduced as the astrophysicist. I mean, we would all go, I would go bananas. I mean, and I wouldn't put it past them. That's just such a crowd-pleasing thing. It would break the internet. Mike Schwenk goes on to say, and what better way to introduce them? Also, I think it would be awesome if they intro him in the episode that is The Office Modern Family style. You know what? I never thought of that. Dude, Mike, you, my friend, are onto something. That's probably what they're going to do. Yep. If they do it, if it is Reed Richards, they're going to do it in The Office. That's absolutely true. Oh, I never thought of that. I mean, how meta. That's such a great idea that I just think it's, oh, wow, that's great. Marie Seafring sends in a super chat. Sword Director Hayward is hiding things like being able to see into Westview and Monica's blood work. And when Vision tries to cross the barrier, Hayward said he really wants to get out. Also, Wanda says she doesn't remember how this started. I think Hayward was experimenting on both Vision and Wanda. Marie, are you sure you don't know something we don't know? All of that sounds really interesting. And you know what? I think you might be right about those things, and I think Hayward Hayward can see through the multiverse as well. And maybe that's what Darcy discovered, that the information that was buried, that somehow they have technology that can see through the multiverse and contact somehow. That would be really interesting. Wrecker Sam sends in a super chat and says, Quicksilver, where did all these kids come from? Rewind. Wanda, what? Quicksilver, look at all these kids. Yeah. It was good stuff. Very good stuff. But now, again, I love the fact, here's what I love about the show, is that it's almost like they anticipate all the stuff that we're going to be talking about as we watch these episodes unfold. It's pretty great. It's pretty great. Philippe Desamores sends in a super chat, says, hi, John and Ann. You two are terrific. They are terrific. Gives me hope for revisiting marriage one day. I watched a Spider-Man Far From Home waiting for episode 6 to drop. Teacher Julius saying, I'm a man of science, but witches has new meaning. Everything in Spider-Man Far From Home does, because it takes place 7 months after all this. So I guess what happened would be known to everyone. That's very funny, yo. OJ sends in a super chat and says, I thought the Yo Magic commercial was referencing Thanos, Shark, from the end of Infinity War teleporting to Wakanda. Wakanda's magic failing and then being dusted. Could be, but I think it has a more direct meaning. I think it directly revolves around what's happening with Wanda. I think having to do with Thanos would be too far out. But you never know. In this show, I wouldn't put anything past this show. Kay sends in a super chat and says, Agent Hayward is still suspicious. I think he put in the old Quicksilver. Also, are they foreshadowing Monica getting her powers? I think they're doing all of that. I think Hayward, now that I think about it, Hayward, he can see through the multiverse, and he was the one that found that Quicksilver, I'll bet. Ian St. Amon says, I get William Stryker vibes from Hayward. Absolutely. He does sound like William. He does sound like Stryker, totally. But we'll see. I mean, he also seems like, when we first met him in episode 4, him and Monica seemed so buddy-buddy, but maybe they weren't. Obviously, things are different than we first thought. Ian St. Amon sends in another super chat and says, I think Hayward will either be demoted or dead at the end, and Nick Fury will show up to take control of S.W.O.R.D., placing him for Spider-Man Far From Home. Maybe. I think that's a distinct possibility. Sure. David Morgan Jr. sends in a super chat and said, would love to see full strength Wanda versus Jean Grey. They have similar powers, but once Dark Phoenix kicks in, it would be over for Wanda, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, I think that would be great. X-Men versus Avengers. But I don't know if it'd be over for Wanda. It depends. Because the thing about Wanda is she can change reality. So the Phoenix can't do anything like that as far as we know. Louis Rectus sends in a super chat and says, hey, John, wow, the ending to this episode shows Wanda is not joking around. Increasing the size of the Hex, an Avenger has got to step in and intervene. I agree. And it's got to be Doctor Strange, right? Doesn't it? Frostbite3 sends in a super chat and says, Frostbite. I get it, because the Frostbit, it's Frostbite. Got it. Frostbite sent in a super chat and says, I believe Wanda is 100% in control. I just think it's gotten so out of hand that her consciousness is creating things by itself. That's a good theory too, but I think something else, like did she create this? Like, I'm going to go create Westview, and I'm going to go live in a place where I can live in sitcoms. It's so out there that it just seems such like a strange thing for her to do in the first place. Brian Pantoja sends a super chat in and says, do you think Aaron Taylor Johnson will return? No, I don't think he will. But then again, it's this show, so maybe he would. Would they bring him back from the dead? I don't know. I think he's really dead, so they can't. I don't think they could bring him back, although that's just me. Maybe they can. Vision is a machine, whereas a human being is different, I think. But I could be wrong. Black Rice 19 says, what if the Hex expands across the Earth? Is this how they explain mutants? The Hex altered Monica's DNA. I think next week the villain gets revealed. I think the villain's going to have to be revealed at some point. We've got to see something going on. We really need to know who is the antagonist. And if you think about it, we've just seen Act 2. Because episodes 1, 2, and 3 were Act 1, episodes 4, 5, and 6 were Act 2. Now that was the turn. The expanding Hex takes us into Act 3, which is episodes 7, 8, 9. It's a perfect 3-act structure. So I agree. I think that will happen. Dion Hennebree says, now that Darcy is inside the Hex, I would love to see her show up as Max from Two Broke Girls. It's perfect. Over or under 20% this happens. Man, that's so meta. I don't think it's going to happen, but that's crazy. That'd be pretty funny if she did. Neener99 sent in a super chat and says, when I saw the people frozen on the street, it reminded me of when Professor X would do that in the movies. My idiot mind thought he was going to show up. We'll never say never, but I don't think he's the one doing that. So we shall see. Grant Williams sends in a super chat and says, Agnes could move or talk before Vision zapped her. Why when no one else in the vicinity could? Pietro demon spawn line and probing behavior. Suspect as well. He's sketchy as F. Oh, yeah, totally. Hayward is clearly bad. No idea what his angle is. I think Hayward... maybe he's bad, but I don't know if he's necessarily a villain because it's such a trope now of the Marvel Cinematic Universe that all these guys are bad Hydra agents. Maybe he's just trying to do his job. JMeister25 sends in a super chat and says, very, very good episode. I just wish it was longer. Me too. Hayward needs a Nick Fury boot up his ass, and Wanda needs to fully confront Pietro. I think we're going to see that. I think it's definitely coming. Like I said, Acts 1 and 2 are over. Now we're in the Endgame, Act 3. Can't wait to see what happens. Something wants Wanda. Grant Williams says something wants Wanda to use her power. Agnes, Pietro. I think they both do for whatever reason. And maybe the big bad, whoever we don't know yet. It's revealed. I think once we find out who this person is and what's going on, everything will be clearer. But something wants her to use her powers. They wanted her to create those kids. Hector Curiel sends in a super chat. Thank you, sir. Thanks, Hector. Last night's animated commercial had a kid with a Yo-Magic yogurt die. Could this be a foreshadowing of what may happen to Wiccan and Speed? That whoever is also behind this wants to absorb the twins' powers and souls? Cue Mephisto? Yeah, I think absolutely. And then they're going to save those kids and they're going to keep those kids in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But I think you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Powers Power sends in a super chat and says, that's not Pietro. When she called out, this entity saw it as a chance to get in and investigate. Dr. S is keeping our realm locked. But Wanda is an unprecedented wild card, and kids will need an anchor if Hex is gone. In comics, they are very linked to Mephisto. Good bargain chip. That could very well be the case. I think that's a really good point that you're making. But again, it's hard to say. It's hard to say where they're going with this because already the levels of outlandishness are off the charts. So how outlandish are they going to go? Honestly, I don't know. We shall see. Grant Williams introducing Omega level mutant Scarlet Witch. Hype. Yes, she is an Omega level mutant. She's one of the most dangerous of all. I am hyped too, Grant. Cam K says, oh yeah, John, remember one of your shows someone said Wanda's becoming OP and you didn't is becoming OP and you said you don't know what whip up means? Just so you know, OP means overpowered. Hope this helps. I knew what OP meant. Hip. It's so funny. Actually, I'm going to start saying a hip when everyone says overpowered. Empire Fan 1980 says, the comic book costume may have looked stupid if it was in the movies, but man, she looks so hot in that costume. Empire Fan, you and I park our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay. She looked amazing. Yes, she did. Let's just take... I mean, this doesn't do her justice, but yes. There you go. Empire Fan goes on to say, now that Darcy got stuck in the Hex, maybe we'll see her as a waitress, hints to Two Broke Girls. It does. I mean, you and everyone, great minds think alike on this show. They do. Empire Fan 1980 goes on and sends another super chat and says, I think now is the perfect time to call an Avenger. Yeah, if they don't call an Avenger, I'm going to call an Avenger. Come on, brah. Call them. Don't call the Ghostbusters, even though they could help too, probably. Call an Avenger. Philip Carbon sends in a super chat and says, hey, John, so the whole commercial took me out of it. I didn't understand the purpose of that commercial. Can you try and explain? Well, obviously it has something to do with magic. When you consume magic and it doesn't work, and the big bad, the big shark comes and gives it to you. I think there's a lot of underlying meaning in that commercial, and it's gonna be revealed soon. Timothy Platt, or Plate, says, Monica, let's go meet up with my guy who can get me back in the hex. Darcy says, you guys go ahead. I'll meet you once I'm finished hacking here at camp. Nothing bad is going to happen to me. Yep. Nothing bad is going to happen. Wow. Boy, she spoke too soon. Motion Soldier sent in a super chat and says, what if this isn't the first time Wanda broke? What if she has erased mutants in the past but doesn't remember? Nobody does. Well, now that's interesting. That's interesting. Maybe. Philip Carbon sends in a super chat and says, hi, John. I've been following you since the AMC days. Anyway, what's the difference between S.W.O.R.D. and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? S.W.O.R.D. was established to deal with extraterrestrial or supernatural threats, whereas Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is an Earthbound organization. And S.W.O.R.D. was founded after the Captain Marvel Skrulls incident in the 90s. At least that's how it works in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So MCV Multi-Comics first sent in a super chat and says, did Pietro seem like he was probing Wanda to see what she knew or remembered, or was that just me? No, it wasn't just you. He absolutely was. He seemed like he knew something but didn't say. Oh, I know. He knew. He knew something and he was probing her. I'm fully on board now with Pietro actually being Mephisto. He seems to know way too much. He does know way too much. We'll see where that goes. Motion Soldier sends in a super chat again and says, I think we're going to get the Avengers versus Wanda and they'll lose. Also, Wanda could be from the Fox universe, but ran away and forgets. Oh man, what a level of messed upness that would be. You might be very much right about that. Zara Francisco said, heard a theory that Agnes is actually Olivia Octavius. I think that's cool because she's a great Doc Ock, and I'm starting to doubt Agnes's magical nature. I don't think so. But again, I mean, they're bringing back Dr. Octopus, so maybe. Could be. Maurice Baptiste says, or is it Morris Baptist? Hey, John and Mrs. Better Campea. Super long time viewer. First time writing in. Well, thank you very much. Vision can't catch a break. First day born, his father tries to kill him. He gets killed by his girlfriend while looking into... Where are you at? Into... I don't know if there's anything else there. But while looking into... Maurice, I think you got cut off there. But yes, he cannot catch a break. What a sad life Vision's led so far. I mean, he literally had the Mind Stone plucked from his head by Thanos. Oh, man. Wow. Christopher Richards sent in a super chat and says, hey, what's up, John? I know this is a WandaVision spoiler review, and I do have my questions. Okay, so when I say this, it's not me blowing smoke up your a-hole. I've been watching you since before the 24-hour marathon for the Philippines, and I actually stayed up the whole time. This is my first time being able to help the channel, and it feels good because you mean a lot, not only to me, but all of us. John, I mean that. I was a teenager when I started watching you, and I'll be 30 this year. Oh, my God. Because of you, I'm a huge movie fan, and I'm an even better person. I've listened to many people over the years. A lot have come and gone, but you, John, you always remain, because even though I don't know you personally, I feel like if something were to happen to you, I'd be devastated. So I'll give you your roses now. I love you, man. We all do. Now on to WandaVision. Did you see the trailer? Did you see the trailer where Wanda was lying in bed? It was a white room and she looked in pain, man. Now, I don't have a question, but I'm so ready for these last 3 episodes, man. So am I. Christopher Richard, first of all, let me thank you for those kind words. That was very, very nice of you, and I really appreciate those sentiments, and I feel the same way about John. You know, working with him has been a lot of fun, and I'm glad we have, and I'm glad he means something to you. It means something to me, too. The whole Campea clan does. And Ray, everybody, it's been a great thing knowing him. So it's very nice that you had that to say. So thank you very much indeed. Dion Hennebree sends in a super chat and said, been skeptical for a long time, but now I believe Nightmare is the villain. I remember Feige saying he'd like to use the character in Doctor Strange 2. Could very well be. Could very well be. One never knows until we know. Maybe next week. So it could be, you could be right. Dino Vader sends in a super chat and says, my overall theory at the end of this season, Wanda will extend the hex to the entire universe, and that is the beginning of the multiverse. That's interesting. I don't know about that, because that'd have to be a really big hex. Really, really big. It's All Groovy sends in a super chat and says, Pietro saying he remembers getting gunned down for no reason like a chump. Now I know he's evil. Pietro died saving Hawkeye and the kid. That's not dying like a chump. Maybe he died in his own universe and we didn't know about it. Because he doesn't even necessarily have to be the Pietro from the Fox Marvel universe. He could be from a different multiverse, a different universe entirely. John Hennebree says, Nightmare manipulates Wanda. Strange has to save her. I think you might be right. The corpses, the TV ads, they're all Wanda's nightmares. She's being tormented, and I think he'll use Wanda as a weapon. I think you could very well be right about that. And that sounds like a reasonable theory to me. It really does. So it wouldn't surprise me if you are indeed correct. Extent Crab sends in a super chat and says, it's almost midnight here in the UK, but I just ordered a burger, some fries, an Oreo waffle. Woohoo! What's an Oreo waffle? And I'm strapping in, ready for some WandaVision theorizing. Love you guys. I want an Oreo waffle now, Extent Crab. I enjoy that. You already ate it. It's already gone down and probably come out by now, but I bet it was good. Let's see, I already did that one. Devin A. sends in a super chat and says, such a packed episode. I loved it. No dialogue is wasted. It's all crucial and so well written. Love seeing everyone's costume. Really made me smile. Made me smile too, man. How good did Elizabeth Olsen look dressed as the classic Wanda? I mean, does she rock that outfit or what? Come on now. D Game sends in a super chat and says, there's a scene in the second trailer where it looks like furniture in Wanda's house is glitching. Could explain Dead Vision and Quicksilver. Absolutely. Could all just be, this whole thing could be some crazy holographic projection of some kind. We don't know. Jeff Prince sent in a super chat. Hello, John and Ann. I believe that Hollywood is not the real bad guy. That Haywood is not the real bad guy. I think he's doing what he thinks is right. I kind of do too. Kind of like William Stryker and Bolivar Trask of the MCU. Thoughts and thanks for the entertainment. Jeff, I think you could be right. He seems like, look, when he was talking to Monica Rambeau, he seemed like a good dude. Like when we first met him. Maybe he just thinks he's doing the right thing. Devon A. sends in a super chat and says, I can't be the only one who noticed Peter's line kick-ass, nodding to the other Quicksilver's other superhero film. A cool throwaway line, I think. So meta. I'd stop and wait, what? I had to watch it again. JMeister25 sent in a super chat and says, Vision is a true Avenger. Even as he's dying, he begs the people in front of him to help those imprisoned, and they stand there and watch. So sad. Markville Blah sends in a... Wait a minute, I didn't even answer that. Vision is a true Avenger, and it was sad. And he's still there as he's disintegrating, being pulled apart, begging for people to be helped. Markville Blah sends in a super chat and says, Hi, John and Ann. Lady Octopus uses reality-changing tech in the comics to resurrect Doc Ock. Kathy Hahn voices Lady Ock in the Spider-Verse film. Worth a Google. Wow, really? Tosh Harvey Dinal sent in a super chat and says, Hey, John, love your show. I just wanted to ask you, did you catch Pietro calling the twins demon spawns? It's ironic because they're part of Mephisto's life essence in the comics, which means in real life they really are demon spawns, which is pretty amazing. So you might be right. Mark Voblah Agnes sends in another super chat and says, Agnes seems awfully interested in Resurrection. Killed Sparky to test Wanda's abilities, but lost control to Wanda and wants help out. Probably true. Ian Wendu sends in a super chat and says, what's Hayward up to? He wants the Hex to stay? I don't know. It will all be revealed, methinks. Boaz Chapman sends in a super chat and says, I have a feeling episode 8 will show what happened to the 3 weeks. I have a feeling episode 8 will show what happened the 3 weeks before this all started. You know what? I think that's a good bet. We'll have more hijinks in episode 7. Episode 8 will jump back in time than episode 9. That's a good bet. I think you're right about that. BW Rojas says, over or under, do you think Wanda is the one that convinced Vision to take himself offline, as mentioned in Infinity War, so they wouldn't track and they can live peacefully? Oh, yeah, absolutely, I think so. Andrew Villarreal sends in a super chat and says, maybe Hayward is actually Mephisto and is trying to antagonize Wanda to make her lose control. I don't necessarily think so, because I don't think he knew what was going on when he sent Monica to go check this out. I think he was like, well, what is this? What's going on? But then again, maybe he did know. Maybe he sent her on purpose. Could be. Andy Anthony says, Pietro clearly knows what Wanda's doing. She asked there how she got the kids from. How is he so aware? Maybe he's not Pietro at all. Thanks, Sean. I don't think necessarily he is, or maybe he is from a different universe. We're thinking about him as being one. He's either not that Pietro, but he could be a Pietro from a third universe than we're thinking of. So we shall see. I don't know. Andy Anthony says Pietro. I just read that. Cineflame sends in a super chat and says, I'm sure somebody's already asked, but how did Sword get the Vision's body? Good question. I mean, they had 5 years. Maybe they collected it from Wakanda. Maybe when Wakanda was done examining it or something, they gave it back. Good question. Maybe that'll be answered. Maybe we'll see that flashback in episode 8. Richard Fairhurst sends in a super chat and says, recast Pietro called the kids Devil Spawn, and it's not just a casual reference for Halloween. Pietro knows what's up in the spell, in the hex, the spell, and the curse. Probably very much, he probably does. Thundercloud sends in a super chat and said, did you notice that one of the twins' powers is the same as Professor X's? Foreshadowing or red sharing? I don't know, because I think they're based on their characters in the comic. So go look to the comic to see what Wiccan and Speed can do. I don't necessarily think it foreshadows Professor X. Angel Torres sends in a super chat and says, I have been, what if this is how we actually get the Hexmen? It affected Monica, so what's to say not the rest of the people in the town? A lot of people thought that way. I would like to believe that isn't the case. What if, it just seems to me that if magic and this one event causes all the X-Men, it gets rid of the history. Mutants have a history throughout human history. But I don't want them to be the result of whatever's going on here. I don't. Chris 1529 sends in a super chat and says, what are the chances that any of the main characters end up being a Skrull? I wouldn't put it past anyone to be a Skrull. I wouldn't. Shwanda R sends in a super chat and says, hi, John and Ann. Did you notice during the Halloween flashback that little Wanda and Pietro were dressed as Natasha and Nick Fury? I marvel at the small details. It's truly great. That's what I love about this show. They've thought through everything. Everything. Dangerous Lee sent a $5 super chat in saying, all my theories crushed. Loving this show. We don't mean to crush your hopes and dreams. Extent Crab sends in a super chat and says, may I suggest for the spoiler discussion of the finale in a few weeks, we see some Wanda and Vision cosplay from you guys? Extent Crab, I think that is a fine idea. John, Ann, if you're listening, I expect you to either dress up as Wanda, John, or maybe let Ann dress up as Wanda, and if not, then you're the Vision. But you could also not just dress up, but do a little gender swapping. Ha ha ha, how about that? Kang. I don't know if I should read something from Kang. What if he sent something from a different time that's going to reveal something important? Kang sends in a super chat and says, at 24 seconds in the featurette, there's a picture of Wonder Man behind the creator, Jack Schaefer. I believe they want to pull a reverse to the comics and give Wonder Man Vision's powers. That's Hayward's plan. Ooh, I like that. Stephen Rodalone sends in a super chat and says, there were some lines that Evan Peters delivered that creep me out. I agree. I think he's some sort of antagonist that's involved in this somehow. I wasn't on board with Mephisto, but now I don't know. I don't know either. Could be. I don't know, man. I don't know what's up. Brian Klein sends in a super chat and says, Ann's the best, and John, stop being late. Laugh out loud. I'm usually late too, so I know what you mean. Lizzie J sent in a super chat and says, Pietro calling the twins Demon Spawn, super Mephisto vibes. Yep, could very well be. They were in the comic. King Roman sends in a super chat and said, here's my theory. I don't know what's coming next, and I love it. They can take the story in a bunch of different directions. I love your theory. I don't know what's coming next. That's my theory. That's about my theory too, King. I don't know either. Video Geek Productions LLC sends in a super chat and says, did you see the Freddy Jason costume mashup Easter egg for Nightmare, a villain who rules the dream dimension? That could lead into Doctor Strange 2. I think it could. You could be right about that. Very interesting. Nothing in the show is left to chance. Ian Wendu sends in a super chat and says, I can't believe Hayward insulted Monica about her mom. I can't either. What a dick. Total douchebaggery. Aaron McDonough sends in a super chat and says, the performances in this were fantastic and have been fantastic. You should really watch American Horror Story, John, because Evan is fantastic in it, and you'd be blown away by the talent. Aaron, I agree with you. Evan Peters is amazing in American Horror Story, and he's a phenomenal actor. And he's killing the performances in this show are absolutely amazing. Mickey Cholo sends in a super chat and says, I think there's a crossover with our universe. That's why it's a TV show, comic costume, series, movies, and the other Quicksilver. That's interesting. Like our universe is the Prime universe, kind of like in DC Comics, that everything crosses over into. That'd be really interesting. Oh my God, I can't even think about the fourth wall breaking weird meta. You've hurt my brain. You've hurt my brain, Mickey. R. Henry 1980 sends in a super chat and says, one of two. Do you think that actor Paul Bettany always wanted to work with is to appear later in the screen could be Benedict Cumberbatch? I think it could very well be that. I don't know if they've worked together or not. They could very well be. Technically, they were never on set together. He could swoop in at the end of the show to pull Wanda out of the world at the end of Spider-Man, tell him he needs his help as well. Could be. I mean, I think it's really great that no one is mentioning Captain America, Thor, or Tony Stark. Like, we're so wrapped up in WandaVision, and she's basically been a second-tier character in the MCU, and now it's like, no, nothing else matters. All we care about is Wanda. I love it. Raymond Weaver sends in a super chat and says, based off what has been seen so far, what do you think the post-credits scene at the end of the series will foreshadow? Oh my God, Raymond, we got to get through the next 3 episodes, brah. I have no idea, but I'm sure it will be mind-blowing. I can't even imagine what it's going to be. I honestly can't even imagine. I think it might have something to do with where J. Jonah Jameson came from, though. I think it's going to have to do with some kind of reality warping, multiverse of madness, tearing, something happening. Steven Rondalone sends in a super chat and says, also, I absolutely loved Evan Peters in this episode. Out of all the sitcom eras they've done, this was absolutely my favorite. They did a really good job with this one. I totally agree with you. Really good job. Mike Farino sends in Mike. Very nice, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you for supporting the channel in this way. Mike says, I remember people talking about there may be an MCU hangover after Endgame. This episode and the reaction to it has ended that talk. Hell yeah, it has. No, you're right. Do you remember that? Okay, what Mike is referring to is people are like, are people superhero movied out? Like, is this ending? It's amazing to me that we have 23 movies of the MCU. 23. I mean, I can't believe there are 23. And there's 24 and 25 done already with Black Widow and Eternals, and Shang-Chi, Spider-Man 3, and Doctor Strange 2. I mean, that's 28 movies. 28 movies. And WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier, 29 and 30. Unbelievable. Crazy. And it's like we're all Oliver Twist. Please, sir, may I have some more MCU? It's just like that. Ian Wendu, by the way, thank you very much, Mike, for supporting the channel that way. Ian Wendu sends in a super chat. I would have punched Hayward after that insult. Me too. What a dick. RTD Slayer sends in a super chat and says, I think Doctor Strange brought Evan Peters Quicksilver from the Fox universe and told him what was happening and the reason he asked questions so much. That could be. Although, I don't know, maybe. I don't know. That's a very interesting thing. I don't know. They call me Ranch because I be dressing sent a $5 super chat and says, have you seen the leaked set photos of Catherine Hahn in a Salem witch trial type setting from last year? I have not, but uh-oh. I have no idea what that means. Wow. Donald A. sends in a super chat and says, he wasn't the Pietro from the Fox X-Men that we know of yet. Layers upon layers upon layers. I agree. Rodney Alexander send in a $4.99 super chat and says, how much help will Doctor Strange be to Wanda if he doesn't have the Time Stone anymore? That's a really good question. Like, we don't know. We don't know. I'm really curious to see what's up with Doctor Strange. We don't know. Billdozer MHK sent in a super chat. One of two. The Ancient One warned Bruce what would happen if just one stone was removed from the timeline. What about all of them? I don't think we yet realize the full consequences of the snap. Infinity Saga was the quest. Now we're into the repercussions. Captain Marvel said it was happening everywhere. They said it this episode. Things aren't just bad because people disappeared, also because the stones did. Billdozer, first of all, thanks for supporting the channel, but you, Bill, are onto something. I think you're absolutely right. I think all of this is part of the larger ramifications of what's happened because the stones are gone. And I think you've nailed it 100%. And we don't know what the ramifications are. And remember, this is only 3 weeks since the stones were destroyed and the blip unblipped and the snapping unsnapped. And I think that there's a lot more we need to know. I think you're absolutely right. Connor Williams sends in a super chat and says, I think Darcy sent an email to Vision's workplace. She will end up in Vision's workplace as a computer expert and work with Vision. Ooh, that would be really interesting. I like that idea, Connor. That'd be kind of cool. I don't know if that'll happen, but I think that'd be kind of cool. DeFritis sends in a super chat and says, John, why is it harder this time around to say goodbye? Again, to Vision. This episode made me get quite sad at the prospect of soon saying goodbye to Viz. Everyone loves the Vision. I love the Vision. I don't want Paul Bettany to go. I want the Vision to stick around. I don't want him to go. Fabio Rodriguez sends in a super chat and says, it's the Kree harvesting her powers. They've created twisted memories before. Cameo is Jude Law. Vision's body will create the Sentinels. Fabio, that is a lot of, did I say Fabio? Fabio, that's a lot of suppositions. That's a lot of grabbing from a lot of different things, but you never know. In this case, I wouldn't put anything past anything. Ian Wendu sends in a super chat and says, it's Hayward. He wants to piss her off. He didn't even help Vision. He wants her to use her magic. Could be, but to what end? Like, why? I don't know. Many, many questions. Chris Gonzalez says, that commercial gave us what is to come, just like the people that were stuck on the border. Could be. I think you might be right. Very interesting. JS Gold sends in a super chat and says, going through the hex changes DNA, mutant origins. Again, I'd like to hope not. I've been saying that, but I hope not because I want more. I want more from my mutants. Empire Fan 1980 sends in a super chat and said, they skipped the 90s Malcolm in the Middle. It was 2000s. Malcolm in the Middle was 2000s. They skipped the 90s, but as someone pointed out, it's kind of a combination of the two. But you might be right about that. I know Malcolm in the Middle started in, it was in the 2000s. You know what? I'm going to use this newfangled contraption and find out. Malcolm in the Middle, yes, it premiered January 9th, 2000. So there you go. You are correct. There you go. Benny95 says, I believe the Soul Stone is responsible, and when Wanda says no more Infinity Stones, which will force Doctor Strange to step in as Wanda travels through the multiverse to destroy them in Doctor Strange 2. Could be, Benny. Could be. Tough one. Could be. You never know. I just don't know. Good theory, though. Joshua Tabak sends in a super chat and says, as a kid from the 80s or 90s, I used to love all the Halloween special sitcoms and shows, special sitcom shows. Never thought Marvel would be the ones to restore that, but they nailed it. Joshua, I am right there with you. How crazy to think that that's what they've done. JMeister25 sends in a super chat. WandaVision is about dying and then being dead. Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think it's part of it, which is creepy too. Brian Klein sends in a super chat and says, seeing Quicksilver and Speed dressed up made my year. Your thoughts? Also, Schnepp would have loved this. We all miss his comic book analysis. Brian, Schnepp would have been bonkers about this show. Would have loved this show. He would have loved it. He would have come in every week. I would have gone into Heroes, and he would have been, Rob, did you watch the new WandaVision? And he'd be like, he totally would. You're absolutely right. He would have loved it. And I love seeing Quicksilver and Speed dressed up. It was amazing. It was like, right out of the comics. It wasn't just Wanda and Vision and Quicksilver dressed up as, well, Quicksilver. It was Speed and Wiccan. They were wearing basically their costumes. It was great. RTD Slayer sends in a super chat and says, actually, never mind on what I said, laugh out loud, but I do think Doctor Strange will show up to fix this to connect to his second movie. I don't know if he's going to fix it, but he's going to show up. I don't think this is going to be fixed by the end. Maybe the hex will go away and all that, but there's going to be some bigger problem that is set into motion. Logan Hoyne sent in a super chat and says, Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic next episode would be a huge cameo that Olsen referred to and explained Monica's aerospace engineer friend. You know what? I mean, I think we all kind of want that to happen. Like, wouldn't we? Who wouldn't want that? Who doesn't like John Krasinski? It'd be great. And if they do it, as someone said earlier, if they do it as the Office, oh my God, that'd be so good. Joshua Tabak sends in a super chat and says, I love the old school costumes. They work for TV. They do. Elizabeth Olsen looked beautiful. Kirk Novak sent in a super chat and said, Pietro said that he died for nothing. He didn't. He died saving that boy. Pietro died a hero. This dude has no idea what he's talking about. Yeah, but I posit a theory that it's not either or. He could be from many different multiverses. You never know. Drewski sent in a super chat. Drewski. Hey, John, what if Pietro is Cataract and is working for Hayward, and it's Hayward who's trying to question Wanda using her brother? I can explain how he knows about Ultron and why the alarm going off during the last episode. It could, but then how would anybody know about Pietro unless Hayward can look through the multiverse somehow and found him? It still is a weird leap because Wanda wouldn't know who somebody Pietro Maximoff or Peter Maximoff from a different universe is. There's no reason that they would use him. It's such a weird thing that they have to explain that, I hope. But it would explain other things, like you said. David Petrakis sends in a super chat and says feels like the villain here might be Dormammu. I don't think it's Dormammu. I think they want to introduce new things. I don't think it's Dormammu, but it could be. One never knows. XT sent in a super chat and says Master Pandemonium might be the guy in the background. It would be a nice loophole instead of Mephisto. He was tricked by Mephisto to chase Wanda. Could be. I don't think so, though. I don't think so. It's got to be somebody that they can explain to a non-comic book audience who they are quickly. And I think someone like Mephisto could explain that. But it'd be weird if he shows up like the devil going, I am Mephisto. People are going to be like, wait, what? You're like, what? The devil? Mephistopheles? Like, what? Gabe Campbell sent in a super chat and says, the people need help. He's being ripped apart and Vision doesn't even say we, he says the people. That's a true superhero. Absolutely. Vision was the man. I'm glad I have a hot toy of him. Manny Garcia sends in a super chat and says, do we now think there's someone behind Wanda, the commercial? I think so. Somebody had to show her how to use her powers like that, or something made her stronger. I think both of those things are true. I do. Mario Man 94 sends in a super chat and says, Hayward is up to something. And what an absolute low blow, he said to Monica. Total low blow. Lame. What a dick. And what's interesting is he wasn't like that when they were first talking when we met him in episode 4. When did he become such a dick? Like, why would he do that? Monica's only trying to do her job. The job that she's working for Sword for. Joshua Tabak sends in a super chat and says, love this episode, the Malcolm in the Middle intro, the comic book costumes, the Halloween backdrop, the kids' powers emerging, Agent Wu becoming a badass, Vision's exit, and Wanda's display of power. I got to tell you, Joshua, all of it was so good. I loved all of it. So much happened in the episode. It was great. Alicia Register sends in a super chat and says, does anyone notice that Herb was getting word on what was happening and then Pietro would go past doing what he just said? I didn't quite notice that. Were the Neighborhood Watch getting the updates beforehand on purpose, like it was scripted in that pocket universe? I think that's a really intriguing idea. Maybe they were. I like that idea. But then again, the big bad was giving them these things. Jeff Snyder sent in a super chat and said, here's how I think the series ends. Wanda holding a snow globe with the town of Westview inside it, and she realizes it was all a dream. I hope not. That would kind of bum me out. Gusta89 sends in a super chat and says, my commercial theory, the kid on the island is her brother. She thinks her magic could have saved him, and without yo magic, he died. Maybe. I mean, it could be something along those lines for sure. Or at least it's alluding to that. I think so. Eliza sent in a super chat and says, hey, John, what do you think happened to Darcy, who was handcuffed to the car when she entered the Hex? Will she be some type of mutant? What do you think? Again, I mean, she could be a jump rope for all we know. No, I think she's going to wind up working in that carnival that we saw or something like that. It could be. I don't know. I can't wait. I don't think she's going to be some type of mutant, though. Ian Wendu says, the engineer is the guy that played Richards in Fantastic Four. Is it? Ian Gruffod? Ian Grufford? Gruff, how do you pronounce his last name? Is that who it is? I don't know. But I think... oh, you mean the new Fantastic Four? You mean John Krasinski? I think that would be great if it was. I think everybody hopes that. Maybe Marvel knows that. Shooty Harris sends in a super chat and says, Agnes, Herb is brother... oh my God, I love this. Agnes is Agatha Harkness, Herb is Brother Voodoo, and Dottie is Clea, members of the Midnight Suns, the Dark Entity Ultimate Puppet Master. Doctor Strange appearance at the end, Skywalker level cameo as Reed Richards, John Krasinski. That would be unbelievable. Judy, do you know something we don't know? Because I would love all of those things to be true. If Herb was Brother Voodoo, that would be the coolest thing ever. I love it. Chris Thomas sends in a super chat and says, I started watching your channel because of WandaVision, and I thought it was interesting. Pietro was saying he would be a father figure when Vision was trying to go. It is very interesting. It is. Golden Child 930 sends in a super chat and says, hey, John, what if the true villain is Loki? I mean, that could be cool. I wouldn't say no to that. Could very well be cool. But again, what would Loki be doing all this for? Like, and he's got his own show. I don't think it's Loki. Valentin Vasilev says, I don't understand how she got so strong in 2 weeks. She was strong against Thanos, but that was a Thanos with no Infinity Stones. Hey, I'm with you 100%. I don't know. We're going to have to find that out. How all of this began has got to be dealt with. And we've already gone back in time. We saw when Monica Rambeau came back from the snap. I think we're going to see how this all started. There's going to be a flashback episode. Somebody earlier said episode 8. I bet that's a really good bet. Episode 7, more shenanigans, and then it's going to leave us. Episode 8 is going to be a flashback how all of this started. I think these are all very good questions, Valentin. JMaster25 sends in a super chat and says, I see no problem in exploring dead characters. Any story can be interesting. It just depends how it's done. That is true. WandaVision proves a good story can be told with characters that are dead or brought back. Yes. It can be. I completely agree with anything you just said. How it is done. It's all about how it's written and the characters. 100%. Just a Guy sends in a super chat and says, I'm late. Where's Anne of Not Green Gables? I'm from Pay and love you guys. Is Pay meaning where is that? The Philippines? Pay? I don't know. Is that what that means? Am I uneducated? TH1 sends in a super chat and says, I love Malcolm in the middle. I love Malcolm in the Middle. Over or under 35%, the commercial was a reference to something feeding on her magic. Did Agnes purposely get lost? I don't know if Agnes purposely got lost, but I think definitely someone is feeding on something. Whether they're feeding off Wanda or somebody's feeding Wanda to be stronger, I don't know. But I think someone's feeding off someone. Max Cohen sends in a super chat and says, Agnes is faking. She can move and talk when she should have been in stasis. She's a deep cover mole teamed with the shark. You absolutely could be right. I like that Midnight Suns idea, though. Brother Voodoo and Agnes, that could be rad. And Claire, come on. Ian Wendu says, Herb asking if Wanda wants something changed. Yeah, all that stuff. It's all there, man. There's all kinds of craziness happening. Again, right, I don't think we have any more information. We don't have enough information. There's all these, it could be half dozen different things. I don't know. Michael Botcher says, or Bochar, we only see Wanda stop using her powers. We don't see the Hex stop expanding. I think the Hex will keep expanding until the end of the season. Ooh, that's interesting. Maybe. Slowly moving outward to consume everything. Could be. Joshua Tabak sent in a super chat and says, who is your favorite NPC character, Norm or Herb? I like Herb. I like Herb, and I like, is Norm the guy that's in the office with Vision? I like him too. DGMC. I don't know if they're my favorites, but I like those two characters. DGMC sends in a super chat and says, "Yay! My first theory. We're building to the Maximoff family and friends versus Sword in the Hex over possession of Vision." That's all I got. Still confused. That could be. I could. We could see that happening. I mean, I kind of like that. I like that idea. Empire Fan 1980 sends in a super chat. Haywood as asshole. I hope he gets what's coming to him. He will. But he might not be a bad guy. He might turn the tables. Nothing is as it seems in this show. That's my takeaway. So you never know what's going to happen. Matt Fitch sent in a super chat. Thank you very much, Matt Fitch. I can't keep waiting every week. Opening was great. Agnes thinking she's part of the family. She was definitely playing Vision and all of us there, in my humble opinion. I think Agnes is Agatha Harkness and is working for Big Baddie Mephisto. I think that's probably the simplest explanation for all of this. But I wonder, because I still think, okay, it's still very much a comic book thing, and this is a TV show, and I'm wondering, Mephisto is a big leap for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but you never know. I mean, this is some crazy stuff going on. Mock Media sent in a super chat and says, Vision's falling apart because of his decaying vibranium. Yes, he is, and it's not good. Poor Viz. Unjustifying Gaming sent in a super chat and says, 2 points off the top. 1, I think Pietro is Quicksilver sent by Professor X after feeling a shift in the multiverse. Maybe there are rips on the other side too. That's an interesting question. If the multiverse, I agree with that. I don't necessarily think that's what happened, but there would be rips on the other side of realities too, not just on our side. I think that's a really interesting point. Crash Woodson sends in a super chat and says, being born in 94, Malcolm in the Middle was one of the many great shows I grew up on. I was so happy how heavily they leaned into Malcolm in the Middle feel. I did too. It was really well done. I mean, and the great thing is that it isn't Malcolm in the Middle, but we all know that it is. So they do such a good job with that. I love it. Tracy Dale sends in a super chat and says, what do we think the Yo Magic ad refers to? Wanda's loss of Pietro, her inability to undo death with her magic, or something else, or all of those things? Again, it's hard to say. I still think someone might be feeding her something in terms of power. She's amplified. It's weird. I really don't know. But all of these theories are good ones. Because Cinema Reviews sends in a super chat and says, I've been getting vibes of Superman for the man who has everything. Ooh, I like that. The story where Clark has to give up his heart's desire to escape a mental prison. That's a great story, Alan Moore's story. And I think that I never thought about that. There's some truth there. So for those of you who don't know, in that story, Mongol puts like this flower, this thing on Superman, and he has this vision that he's still on Krypton, and he has a normal life and all this, and he's living in a dream world and he doesn't even know it. That's a really interesting idea. Aridus Industries sends in a super chat. How meta would it be for John Krasinski to show up as Reed Richards in an episode where the sitcom mirrors a mockumentary like The Office? Some other people have said that. Greatest thing ever. That's why I think it's a possibility. It's my favorite. I think it's my favorite thing that I've heard about that. My God, how fun would that be? Mike sent in a super chat and says, I love how they acknowledged Wanda and Pietro's accent change. So good. They're just it's so good. No stone is left unturned in this show. Spencer Smothers sent in a super chat. Pietro is gaslighting Wanda a lot in this episode. He was, and I was there for it. You're absolutely right. He was totally gaslighting her, and he wasn't even pretending anymore. Lore Howard sent in a super chat and says, Pietro said he was there to create chaos. And indeed, maybe he is Mephisto, because that's what Mephisto does. Unjustified Gaming sent in a super chat and said, the second, Vision definitely is a manifestation, but the Mind Stone is very much real. If it was fake, Marvel would have made a note to have it flake off. Maybe, but that's a very good question. I don't know. It's an Infinity Stone, so where is it? How is it? Thanos plucked it off his head. Can it really be the Mind Stone? Jeffrey Snyder sends in a super chat and says, Director Hayward is the Skrull that got away in Captain Marvel after the train fight. Ooh. I like that. Could very well be. Manny Garcia sent in a super chat and says, any thoughts on why people toward the edges of town weren't able to move? I think the farther you get away from Wanda, the less control. She just has no control, so she leaves those people in stasis until she needs them, or something like that, I guess. Power sent in a super chat and says, the director is going to be the MCU version of Trask. Maybe. I just think it's odd that, when we first met him, we liked him, but then now he's a dick. But okay. Craig Sweeter sent in a super chat and says, the commercial could represent Vision. He can't have access to Yo Magic, so he dies. Ooh, that could be. And represents Wanda as the survivor guilt from Pietro and Vision. Yep, I like that idea. I think that could very well be. That would fit into the themes of the show. I would buy into that. DJ Infa Desert Eagle Int sends a $6.92 super chat. Monica's outfit came out of the Hex in Wanda mode and still fully functional. So can't Vision live? Feels like they've changed the rules they set up. I don't necessarily think so, because we don't even know what those rules really are yet. They've seen certain things happen and certain things not happen. So I don't know if it's really established. Jason Ritchie sends in a super chat and says, so Pietro said he doesn't remember anything after being shot in the street, but then he said that Wanda's dead husband can't die twice. He's definitely connected to whoever's in control. I agree with that. I mean, obviously there's whatever's going on here, a lot we don't know. R. Henry 1980 sends in a super chat and says, do you think Wanda's saying could be twisted to create mutants? No more mutants. I can't take credit. I did hear this somewhere else. I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think they're going to use this situation just as a reason to create mutants, because part of the great thing about the X-Men's mutant characters is that there's a mutant history that parallels human history, and if they were just all created now, they would be getting rid of that, and I don't like that. T-Edge1 sends in a super chat and says, over or under 30%. Sword created something like MODOK to help out during the blip from Vision's body, and that is what is part of amplifying Wanda's power, making Hayward responsible like Tony with Ultron. Huh. I don't know if that's true, but I think the idea that Sword was doing something during the blip, I think that you're onto something there. I don't quite know about the details, but could very well be. Wow, this is a tough name. Kansani Macthalila. Kansani Macthalila. Thyatira Sardi. Wow, that's a tough one. Send in a super chat. I'm sorry I just butchered your name, but a great name it is. I'd love to know how to say that correctly. What a cool name. Hi, John. I'm from South Africa, and I wanted to say that it's possible, maybe that with the cells changing on a molecular level, that Wanda could be making mutants. Well, she definitely did make her children, who Wiccan and Speed are mutants. So I think you're right about that. I don't know if she can make all the mutants, but you're spot on. She made mutants. David Hawks sent in a super chat and says, government director hates super beings, experimenting with AI and robotics, i.e. the birth of the Sentinels. But why would you have the birth of the Sentinels if there's no mutants other than Wanda Maximoff? Unless there are. We don't know that yet. I hate your whimper. You never know. I think that could be, there's something there. Opinionated Movie sent in a super chat and says, I 100% think that Monica's contact engineer will end up being Wonder Man, who will be the Luke Skywalker cameo. But nobody knows who that is. We do. I mean, comic readers do, but I don't think anybody, the people at home, are going to know who Wonder Man is, as far as, unless you know your Avengers history. John Burnham sends in a super chat and says, the two movies on the marquee were The Parent Trap, 1998, and The Incredibles, 2004. The same year's Blade and Blade Trinity came out. Coincidence? I think it's a coincidence. But on this show, again, no stone left unturned. The Parent Trap and The Incredibles. Very interesting. What do those two movies have in common with this? Powers Power sent in a super chat and says, laugh out loud. I'm not sure the MCU government agencies know how to properly assess threat levels. How long did it take for Shaft to call Captain Marvel? Yeah, I don't think they do. Well, they don't. How would they know? I mean, everything is new. No one's seen. Oh man, it's another Hex. No one's seen anything like this before. I mean, they're looking at it going, "Oh my God, 3 weeks ago, half the universe just showed back up after 5 years, and now we got some Hex." Can you imagine, like, being in the Marvel universe and having to deal with these kinds of threats? It'd be wacky, man. Unjustified Gaming sends in a super chat and says, two low-key ideas. Agnes is faking the Frozen effect. I think that's probably true, by the way. The MCU put her at the very edge, yet she drives off after Vision puts her back under while everyone else is frozen. More Avengers coming for sure. I think all of those things are correct. I think you're absolutely right. Kensani Magathalila Thayatira Sardi. Oh, man, that's a tough one. I feel Wanda has a split personality to handle trauma. I agree with that. I think you're probably right. With that. Jacob Werman sent in a super chat. Out there idea. Pietro's Loki sent by TVA to investigate the situation. He never saw the real Quicksilver, so he turned into one from another timeline. Could be, but why would he be there? Like, why wouldn't he just be Loki and be like, hey, what's up? Why the subterfuge? Glenn Taylor sends in a super chat and says, is it just me or does Pietro give off a Jim Carrey or Michael Keaton from Mr. Mom vibe with his personality? Oh, definitely does. Robert Allen sends in a super chat and says, does anyone notice the woman that was hanging decor and her tear was red? I feel like Agnes is playing Vision. Hayward using Vision to create something. That's interesting. That was really creepy. The woman with the thing going, her hand going, that was, yo, man, that was crazy. Midtown Mike sends in a super chat and says, how about Wanda seeing Pietro's dead body like she did with Visions, and how off-putting was that couple just putting Halloween decorations in a loop? I'm still on the Mephisto bandwagon. Such a great show. It's such a great show. I'm with you. I don't know. And the creepy, scary stuff in this episode. Ben Pochiska sends in a super chat and says, hey, John, what if our hidden player is using Wanda and her power to bring back Vision, only a small protected reality to contain Wanda herself? I think that's all part of it. I think that's absolutely part of it. But then again, you'd think, like, why do this in public? If you're going to do something like this, why do it in public? What do you think? No one's going to notice and attract the attention of SWORD? This couldn't have been done somewhere else. It had to have been done in New Jersey, where in the middle of where someone from Witness Protection Program was. It was a little, Carlos 16 sends in a super chat and says, hey, John, I think the engineer person could be Bill Foster and Ghost from the end of Ant-Man and the Wasp. I don't think so, but I wouldn't mind if they showed up again. That could be kind of cool, but I don't think, not for this show. I don't think so. Spencer Smothers sent in a $2 super chat. How does Wanda see SWORD? A circus full of clowns. Yep. And we're going to see that literally. I love that. Derek Thomas Pierce Phillips sent in a super chat. I think what the director is hiding is Vision related. SWORD. SWORD's Vision is a sentient weapon that's being observed and responded to. Maybe that could be. I mean, again, all these are great theories. I don't know how to respond because every time I watch the show, I think something different. Jose Hernandez says, Wanda said kick-ass. Do you think that they were referencing the movie since Evan Peters and Aaron Taylor Johnson were both in it? Yes, I do. They got a little meta there, and they absolutely were doing that. Jason A. sends in the super chat. Wonder if the director has anything to do with Falcon and Winter Soldier, where Zemo also hates superheroes. Connection? Ooh, that could very well be. I don't know, because originally this was supposed to come out after Falcon and Winter Soldier, but it could be. Definitely could be. I wouldn't put it past him. Solar Eclipse Productions sends in a super chat and says, engineer top candidates. Hank Pym, Janet Van Dyne, Bill Foster, unlikely picks. Talos, Forge, Fitz, Beast, or Reed Richards. Thoughts? I just don't think people like Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne would be, they'd be fine. They'd be kind of cool. Talos may be cool, but I think Reed Richards is the coolest. That'd be the one where people are like, whoa. I mean, that would people like, oh my God, John Krasinski's Mr. Fantastic. That's the greatest thing. That's fantastic. So, Fernando Alvarez Juarez sends in a super chat and says, what if we get a scene where a few SWORD agents asks, Well, ask one another, why don't we call an Avenger? And another one says, we can't. They're not in the script. That would be crazy. I don't think it's going to happen. They're going to have to call somebody, but that would be pretty funny. Dan's production sent in a super chat and says, it's interesting that the Hex is in New Jersey because WandaVision leads to Spider-Man 3. The Hex might expand to New York City where Spider-Man and DS live. Well, yeah, it's true. Doctor Strange and Spider-Man, I think Doctor Strange is supposed to be in Spider-Man 3, I think, right? I think so. Jason H. sent in a super chat and says, why couldn't Doctor Strange have plucked a Pietro from the multiverse and sent him into the Hex to investigate? He wouldn't know what Pietro looks like. Well, yeah, but I mean, that's why he wouldn't know. So I don't think that's the case, but we'll see. Jordan Smith sends 1 of 3. I think I figured it all out. Hayward is the shark feeding off Wanda's power to get to Vision. Agnes is an undercover sword agent, which is why they don't have her name and why she was on Ellis Street. She was there to lure Vision to the edge to get him curious enough to leave the Hex, and he's trying to use him for his AI work. Banking off what I said, so technically, Agnes was sent in to keep Wanda happy so Vision's vibranium from decaying because Hayward needs him. That could be, but then again, I mean, I don't think they set up this whole thing. I think something else did, and we're going to find out. There's going to be a flashback episode where we find out. LGB Vintage Toys sends in a super chat and says, maybe the individual that created this environment is trying to protect the world from Wanda. Maybe Professor Xavier. I don't think so. I don't think it's going to be Xavier because it's too much of a leap. This show is already so connected to the Marvel Cinematic Universe in so many other different ways. To bring in people like the X-Men, they don't have any plans yet for the X-Men, so unless this is it and it's slow reveal, I don't know. Valentin Vasilev sends in another super chat and says, I'm not sure if Hayward is evil, but I think he'll be gone by Far From Home and Fury will replace him. Probably. That sounds like a good bet. Mark Fournier sends in a super chat and says, Wild Theory number 4,683. Am I the only one getting Beyonder vibes here? No, come on, dude. What if this is just the beginning of a long story arc bringing us to Secret Wars? No, this is not. The Beyonder's not here. Although, if the Beyonder showed up, I wouldn't think that wasn't cool. Ray the Prodigy sends in a super chat and says, could it be the Mind Stone is driving all of this through Wanda? Maybe the stone is trying to manifest itself again somehow. We've talked about that theory in the past. I like that theory. I think you definitely might be onto something with that one. Yeah. Yep. Aaron Stewart says, theory, Westview is full of adults with no children. They were conned into coming to Westview on the promise that Wanda would give them children, and that's the intro to mutants in the MCU. Ooh, I like that theory. I think that could be kind of interesting. But again, I don't think that we're just going to see mutants appear in the MCU. I don't know how they're going to do it, but I don't think they're going to appear. Dragon10 sends in a super chat and says, I just thought of this idea. What if the director isn't the big bad, but someone similar to Amanda Waller, potentially a recurring character? Oh, I think he's a recurring character. I think we're going to see him again, unless he dies, but I think he's a recurring character. Peter Pacheco sent in a super chat and says, I'm leaning toward Quicksilver being Nightmare, and the oh shit moment will be Doctor Strange because they said this runs into Doctor Strange too. Yeah, but everyone's expecting Doctor Strange to show up. I mean, even if you hadn't heard anything, it's magic. There's a hex involved. Doctor Strange showing up would be that's exactly what you'd think is going on. Wing Films Test Dummy Channel sent in a super chat and says, perhaps Sword has not contacted the Avengers and that the director's hiding they were using the Vision to make weapons or who's behind the firewall. There could be, but they're going to have to, at this point, they don't even know what they're dealing with. So I think that they're going to have to call the Avengers in. I think so. Ross Bitar sends in a super chat and says, I believe the commercial was a metaphor for Vision's death. The shark was Ultron, the yogurt cup was the Mind Stone, and the kid was Vision. That could very well be. I like that. But do we have to see that already? Because we already know. Wouldn't that have already happened? Or was that just reiterating something that we already know? Matt Fitch sends in a super chat and says, everyone being frozen, and especially the one woman being stuck in the same repetitive motion with a tear running down her face, was disturbing and sad as F. Yes, Matt, it really was. I was disturbed by that, but it was such a great touch. So great. Justin Armstrong sends in a super chat and says, Pietro's hair is a nod to the comics, but it is exaggerated in such a way where it looks like devil horns in certain scenes. I think he's Mephisto. Mephisto, I think you're absolutely right about it was exaggerated. I don't know if it was devil horns, but could be. But then again, how would Mephisto know who that Quicksilver was? That's what I want to know. Unless he's traversing the multiverse, you know. Glenn Taylor sends in a super chat. Crazy theory. What if Jane Foster shows up for Darcy and she gets sucked into the hex and that changes her DNA, causing the cancer leading to female Thor? Could be. Kansani Magathiolia Fatira Sardi says Catherine Hahn could be Octavia from the Spider-Verse. Could be, but again, that's just too much. It's too much. They're piling too much on. But maybe because they're piling so much on, people are going to be like, wait, what? Terry Youngman Jr. sends in a super chat and says, ever since Age of Ultron, I've never believed the Mind Stone actually gave Wanda her hex magic. I've always thought it was likely just it unlocked her and Quicksilver's dormant mutant powers. What do you think? 100%, Terry. 100%, that's what I think. I absolutely agree with you. 100%. Chrissy L., they were already that way, and their latent powers were unlocked. I completely agree. Chrissy L. sends in a super chat and says, last episode or two has to be like an hour long each, right? Too much to explain. Also, Pietro refers to the kids as demon spawn. I know, we've said that. I absolutely. And by the way, I've heard, or somebody was reporting on the news, or the internet, you know, the interwebs, whatever the thing's called, that the last 3 episodes are going to be 3 hours. It makes, I don't know, we'll see. But it makes sense. The way they've structured the show has been pretty brilliant. So I can't wait. I think they know. I think they're going to stick this landing. R. Henry 1980 sends in a super chat and says, along with my no more mutants theory, what if when she says it, her bubble goes supernova and covers everyone worldwide and only some mutate? Well, I mean, that could happen, but then, you know, that means the history of mutants starts now, and I just think that that's weird. Taylor Pfeiffer says WandaVision is better than Mandalorian. Yeah, I said it. I think it's a better show than Mandalorian. I love Mandalorian, but this show, in terms of its structure and how intriguing it is and how well thought out it is and how it ties back into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's amazing. We'll see if it sticks the landing. If it doesn't, I'm going to be very sad, but something tells me they know exactly what they're doing. Call Me Kate sends in a super chat and says, I think Mom and Dad would have loved it. Implanting the idea of fixing the loss of her parents. Boom, Magneto. Probably unlikely, but I can dream. Calmy Cates, could be. I don't think so, though. I think it's too much. Too much. Todd Northrup sent in a super chat and says, Ralph still hasn't been revealed. He is probably the guy in witness protection and the villain. Could very well be. Could very well be. The new one sent in a super chat. Monica said her cells are in remission. Does have the same type of cancer her mother has. Could be. Could be, but hope not. Because I really like Monica Rambeau. Eric Rucker sent in a super chat and says, because WandaVision is so good and so unique, did Marvel blow its streaming load too soon by having it first, or is that strategic? Well, I don't think it was supposed to be first, Eric, and I don't think they've blown their wad. I think Falcon and Winter Soldier looks really great. I think it's going to be equally good in a different way. I think that they're really planting their flag in the ground here, saying, look, we're trying to give you A-list entertainment here. We are not going to be treading water, and I think it's pretty great. The Odin Opinion sends in a super chat and says, barrier changes a person's cells. A lot of people went through it. Birth of Mutants, told it should be an event to introduce them, but isn't this one? I just don't think that this is too weird and gimmicky and strange, and I would hate to think that this is how mutants are introduced in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Empire Fan 1980 sends in a super chat and says, when fake Quicksilver said he had the XY chromosome, I thought he was going to say the X gene, and I would have lost my mind. Well, he does have the X gene, because he is a mutant. I mean, by his power, he just didn't say it, though. James Nelson Jr. sends in a super chat and says, I'm wondering if Vision's vibranium is decaying because he took damage in Infinity War. It pierced him, and he couldn't phase through things anymore. All that's possible. Could be. I mean, when you have Thanos pluck that stone out of your forehead, anything's possible. Cookiehead Jenkins sent in a super chat and says, peace and love, John. You say you believe there's someone else involved, but you don't fully believe it's Mephisto, Nightmare, Agnes, etc. So who is it that you have confidence it could be? Just wondering. Again, I don't know. I really don't know who it could be or what's going on. We might even not have a person. It could be something else. You know, something else is going on. And it's not necessarily a villain per se. I Again, I don't care to speculate because it could go either way. I need more information. Do you think an Avenger could show up and save the day like Luke did in Mando? I think that's something like that's going to happen. But then again, it is called WandaVision, and I don't necessarily think an Avenger is going to show up and save the day. I don't know if that would be fair for this particular show. You have to think about the rest of the context of the show. If Doctor Strange shows up and saves the day, then we're all like, meh. I think that there's going to be a lot more to it than just that. The Vegeta90 sends in a super chat and says, does anyone remember Monica saying she had an ally she had to meet? Well, yeah, she's going to meet her astrophysicist friend, and who that might be, we don't know. Might be, maybe if it's John Krasinski, I lose my shit. Jeffrey Mason sends in a super chat and says, do you think Professor X sent Quicksilver to get info out of Wanda? I still believe that he is the real Quicksilver. I don't know. I don't think they're going to get into Professor X. I don't really think they're going to do that. I really don't. Random Andy's channel sends in a super chat and says, do you think Wanda dies in Doctor Strange 2 or Vision kills her? No, I don't think she does. Matt Phillips Review sends in a super chat. Hope Talos from Captain Marvel is Monica's contact. That could definitely be one. It would make sense. Could very well be. I kind of like that too because I really like Ben Mendelsohn as Talos. Senpaigar says, Sam Fisher has just paid off most of what you spent on the renovations to your new house. Congrats. Anyway, I found it strange that Herb was saying what was happening before the kids actually did it. Yep, and there's a reason for it. Nothing. They leave nothing to chance. RC sends in a super chat and says, laugh out loud. Peters plays a character in Kick-Ass who gets called Ass Kicker in the comics. Yep. Yes, he does. All very meta. Kat Harlem sends in a super chat and says, I thought the commercial was referencing when Wanda and Pedro went days without food, waiting to be rescued. Maybe, but I just think it has more to do with what's happening immediately. Because remember, someone's making those commercials. So if that's from Wanda's subconscious or something, if Wanda's doing this, those commercials are her dealing with trauma. So we're seeing something directly out of her mind. Midtown Mike sends a super chat in and says, a wild theory, could Monica's guy be Ben Grimm? Could be. But then again, when you meet Ben Grimm as a guy, I guess you could, hi, I'm Ben Grimm. But was Ben Grimm an astrophysicist? Is that who Monica would go meet? I think it'd be more like it'd be Reed Richards. The Odin Opinion sends in a super chat and says, the line, we know who we're dealing with now, from Hayward at the beginning of the episode. How do they not know? She went toe-to-toe with Thanos. Yeah, it's true. Well, I think what he meant was he knows they're dealing with Wanda Maximoff when they didn't at first. You know, they didn't know who it was at all. A fan of Peanuts sends in a super chat and says, I honestly feel like Wanda isn't trying to expand her world just to enslave people. I think it's careless circumstance of saving family members at all costs. I think you're right about that. She's not trying to enslave everybody. She's trying to, for whatever reason, quell her grief and build something where I agree with you. Jeffrey Mason sent in a super chat and says, what are the chances that the engineer is Adam Brashear, a.k.a. the Blue Marvel? Could be. But again, would people know who that is? I mean, they would if you know the comics. I just don't know if you didn't know the comics, would that mean something to you? And I don't know. Andrew Huffman says, hey, John, I think an Avenger isn't getting involved because Hayward has his own motives. Hayward is the reason that Avengers hasn't been called. But I think after the expanding hex is happening, what they have to call somebody, right? Now they know it's an Avenger. And really, it hasn't been like many days. It's just, this is all kind of happening in real time in a way. So they're going to have to do something now because they don't know how is this thing going to stop. Andrew Huffman sent in a super chat and says, hey, John, I think an Avenger isn't getting involved. Oh, I just said that. I'm bored 1213 sends in a super chat and says, Hayward tricked Wanda into using barf so he could try to manipulate her into stealing Vision to use them both and lost control of the situation. That could be too, but that would be a little mundane. But that's what might have happened. You might be right about that. Joker 99223 sends in a super chat and says, manipulating Wanda's magic seems more up Agatha's skill set than Mephisto or Nightmare. Or her son, Nicholas Scratch, like the rabbit Mr. Scratchy. Could be, but why? You know, what is Agatha like? Who thought up this cockamamie plan? I mean, it seems to me if you want to manipulate somebody and get vision and all these things, coming up with this weird hex sitcom BS is so weird and outlandish. Why would somebody even come up with this as a plan? BK Finest sends in a super chat and says, Pietro's that sibling that shoots off his mouth until you punch him in his stomach, and then you wind up apologizing because mom said so. Laugh out loud, long-time viewer, first-time supporting, awesome channel. Well, BK Finest, I think you nailed that one, and thank you so much for supporting the channel, absolutely. Mr. Murder Nickel sends in a super chat and says, I feel a possible what dreams may come vibe. That's interesting. So maybe she's in the afterlife or purgatory or something. I really like that movie. You reminded me. I'd love to watch that movie again. I haven't seen that movie in a long time. I love that movie. Could be Murder Nickel. Dwayne Woodley sends in a super chat and says, hey, John, Disney's doing such a great job by making us wait in anticipation of each episode of WandaVision. I hope Netflix does the same with ST Season 4. Is that Star Trek Season 4? Would that be Discovery Season 4? Or what ST? I'm not sure what you mean. But I love this every week thing because everyone's crazy about it. And there's all this speculation. Look at this. How many? This is my third chat I've done about WandaVision questions. It's incredible. It's amazing. A fan of Peanuts sends in a super chat and says, in episode 1, before the dinner took place, the guest's wife states that it feels very Agnespheric in here. Thoughts or proof of Agnes's involvement? Ooh, I didn't remember that, but okay. Could be Agnespheric. I like that. Very much so. It could very well be that way. I don't know. Preston Bell sends in a super chat and says, okay, seriously. Does Wanda really have the power to manipulate everything in the town, even when the hex is moving? A higher power is at play here. I believe that, Preston. There's got to be something going, because this whole thing is so cockamamie. Like, where did it come from? We need to know where all this came from. It's almost like in Ghostbusters when the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man was conjured up. That's kind of what this feels like. It's insane. Jasus sent in a super chat and says, Loki invaded Earth. Thor took 1 minute to convince Banner to work with him. The public won't forgive Wanda, but the other Avengers might. Could very well be, yeah. I mean, obviously, it's not her doing. Wanda didn't just say, I'm going to go set up a hex and take some people hostage and make myself some kids and make everything look like sitcoms. Like, I mean, there's something going on here. Bigger. Noel Fernolis sent in a super chat and says, Wanda ending the series and storyline with no more Vision. Maybe, although she wants Vision. She loves Vision. Hawk Pajamas sends in a super chat and says, John, so we know that Nightmare is one of the villains in the new Doctor Strange. Any validity to them mentioning Nightmare twice in this episode? I wouldn't put it past them. There's nothing that's in these episodes that isn't thought out. So if you heard Nightmare, it definitely could be that. I honestly believe that they know what they're doing. So nothing is left to chance. So, and that was Hawk Pajamas saying that. Tom Gennemer. Did anyone else notice Herb listed the crimes before Pietro committed them? Stealing candy from all the children? Yep. He kind of did. So that's interesting. Bruce Wayne says, does the Sword Boss want Vision to create Ultron? Well, they already had Ultron. They could rebuild him, but they might. I don't know. I think maybe Ultron does play a part of this. Could be. Mark Knight says, did you notice when Pietro is blasted by Wanda into the gravestones, timestamp 28:8, one of the graves says, not on her side. Not very subtle. I like that. Yep. Again, everything they show you has a meaning. Everything. Rice Cooker said, the music transition when Vision goes to the edge of the town was creepy, especially when sitcom eerie music overlapping and sitcom music fading. The music of this show is so good. All the jingles in the beginning of the shows and all the orchestral music, it's phenomenal. Phenomenal. They've done such a good job with the music. Steve Irby sends in a super chat and says, the elder god demon Chthon, also known as Darkhold, siphons off magic in the twins and ends up being shards of Mephisto at this point. I'm lost. Wait, let me read that again. The elder god demon Chthon, also known as the Darkhold, siphons off magic and the twins and ends up being shards of Mephisto. At this point, I'm lost. That's funny. Maybe. Jacob Hirsch says, John Krasinski in the 2000s Office episode, will Jim meet Asian Jim? Jim will, could be. That would kind of be funny. The Jedi Brandon sends in a super chat and says, I just realized something. What is the limit to how much surface area Wanda can let the Hex take up? Could she just expand it across the entire globe? The Jedi Brandon, I think that's a possibility we all wonder about. Is it going to engulf everything? And if it does, is she doing it? So many questions. I don't know. But I think all of the answers are maybe. We have to see what's going to happen, but we got to see how big that Hex can get. Mr. Ontiveros sends in a super chat and says, the commercial meant to show that those in close proximity to Wanda feed or thrive off her magic, while those farther away glitch out and will die. Could very well be. We'll see. What did all the other commercials mean? Because they didn't do, they weren't, that commercial was pretty morbid. The other commercials weren't. Peg Killian sends in a super chat and says, I might be a bit behind, but yesterday people were wondering what Wanda was going to say at the end with no more. I think the obvious answer is no more pain. Ooh, Peg, that's really good. No more pain. And then something explosive happens. Ooh, I like that. I think you're onto something. Because that would fit in with the show that we're watching. I mean, no more mutants or no more this or no more that. That's from the comics. But remember, we got to stay on point. What is this show about? And I think that's what's really important to remember. Kat Harlem sends in a super chat and says, do you think Vision will recognize Darla and request information from her? Maybe. Could be. Maybe. I don't know. Sunny Side Up sends in a super chat and says, hell is mentioned a lot. Coincidence? Not. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty wacky. But hell, again, you bring hell into all this, then it's a whole nother layer of the MCU that we haven't had to deal with yet. So it'll be interesting, like, how does Mephisto work in the MCU? I don't know, man. That's a big leap into different territory. Jason Hendricks sends in a super chat and says, I think Wanda is still in control and Doctor Strange will save her in Doctor Strange 2. Maybe. I think, well, obviously she's in Doctor Strange 2. I don't know if she's a villain and Doctor Strange 2 is a rescue mission. They have to put reality back together. I think it's going to fray in Spider-Man 3, and we'll see. I think that J. Jonah Jameson proves that whatever's going on in WandaVision is going to continue and get worse. Was that Dottie? Tyler Pfeiffer says, was that Dottie hanging up the Halloween decorations and crying? It looked like her. I don't know. Was it? It could have been. I don't know. I thought she had dark hair, but no, maybe it was. Andrew Huffman sends in a super chat and says, I've been thinking about why Monica has bad taste in her mouth when it comes to Captain Marvel. Maybe they dated. Captain Marvel confirmed to be gay. Ooh. I don't know. I don't know if they're going to, maybe, if they dated. No, because I think Captain Marvel would have been much older. I don't know how that would work, but that's not a bad theory. Jilted lover? Why not? They could do that. The hero sent in a super chat and says, theory, the Puppet Master is also aware of our universe, the Fox universe, and is taking us for fools alongside Wanda. This brings a character that can react to our world and break Deadpool's walls. That's a lot, but there's a lot there. There's a lot of levels there, and you've got to get, how do you get an audience to understand all of that? That's kind of rough. Oh, you know what I just realized? I think, oh, no, we're good. Never mind. I thought something bad was going to happen. I don't, again, that's so many layers of stuff happening. Ryan Slade sends in a super chat and says, ha ha ha, Darcy is trapped in the House of M. That's kind of funny. Yeah. Although it's not that. This is so different from that. So different from House of M. Frankie Gouge sends in a super chat and says, something to keep in mind. I believe Kamala Khan lives in New Jersey. Could be. I mean, look, whatever happens here is going to have ramifications in the rest of the MCU for a long time. Absolutely. I'm bored. 1213 sends in a super chat and says, this show reminds me of Dreaming. You know what? You nailed that. Lots of abstract ideas bleed in. People may disappear. Maybe people may appear differently visually, and you can't enjoy it and aware it's a dream. It could be something along those lines. John Galendez sends in a super chat and says, hello, how come no one is talking about the fact that Spider-Man Homecoming already revealed a multiverse version of J. Jonah Jameson? I have been. I've been talking about that in all of these chats, and I think we've already seen the results of whatever rip is going on. So, yeah, I think you're absolutely right, John, and we cannot forget that. We've already seen the ramifications of what's going on. 34 Virgo sent in a super chat and says, love the husband and wife. Do you think Feige was still able to Patrick into a cameo and de-age him? I don't know about that. I don't know. Samuel Shin sends in a super chat and says, Malcolm in the Middle, wow. I appreciated the other sitcom tropes and references, but as a Malcolm fan, I loved every minute of this. I also feel like Wanda is truly the Scarlet Witch at this point. Samuel, I think she's absolutely the Scarlet Witch at this point, and you're absolutely right. They did such a good job with Malcolm in the Middle, and it was delightful, was it not? So delightful. Loved it. And again, I thought this sitcom trope would get old, but it really worked in this past episode. Daniel Qualls sent in a very generous super chat. Daniel, thank you so much. I know that John would say thank you so much as well. Thank you for supporting the channel. That was very nice of you. I don't want the stones to be at play, but maybe one is. However, after the Mind Stone experimentation in Ultron, they are a little responsible for her grief in the MCU. Over or under 15%, Wanda's famous line is no more Infinity Stones, if one is at play. I don't know. I don't think that you can get rid of the Infinity Stones. Not entirely, not really. But again, I if this was more about the stones, it's so much more about Wanda and her grief and what's going on. I mean, whether it's Wanda, whether it's her brother, I don't know if the Infinity Stones would be the focus of what it is that she's fighting against. I think, Eric Lee says, John, I think the kids and Pietro are Skrulls. No, I don't think so, because we saw her birth those kids. She delivered them. And they're right out of the comics. We know that the MCU always uses the comics as inspiration. So, Samuel Shin says, also kind of hoping to see Aaron Taylor Johnson to some degree. Feels like we might, but who knows? I wouldn't mind seeing that either. I don't know if they could get him, but it certainly would be pretty cool if they could. Absolutely. I mean, we'll see, I don't know. Windwalker 57 sends in a super chat and says, Pietro's first line, long lost brother to get to squeeze his stinking sister to death, or what? Everything means something, or is it a red herring? I think everything means something, but I think they also just have fun lines and things like that too. Will End sends in a super chat and says, what if Vision's body wasn't the only thing taken from S.W.O.R.D., who were trying to re-engineer Vision in a lab from the experiments, and Wanda got her kids? No, I don't think so, because again, these came out of the comics, and what happened in this kind of mirrors what happens in the comics. I mean, maybe they wanted her to have kids or conjure these kids, but I mean, we'll know. Derek Tomic Pierce Phillips sent in a super chat and says, the full house-ish episode was the 90s, 87 and 95. You're right. You're absolutely right. That is very correct. I am with you 100% on that. So your 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and episode 6 was 2000s. So, yep, I agree. Jermaine Walker sends in Jermaine Walker, thank you so much. You very, very generous. We very much appreciate your support. Thank you for doing this show. I really appreciate your work. Well, Jermaine, we appreciate your generous contributions to the channel. Thank you, and I will. I'm sure John already read these. That's why he gave them to me to do. So I'm sure he already saw this, but he would thank you as well. And since you said I really appreciate your work, I'll say, well, Jermaine, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Mr. Murder Nichols sends in a $5 super chat and says, could Agnes be trying to protect Wanda somehow? Oh, I think probably so. I think Agnes is doing all she can to protect Wanda somehow. We just don't know how. We don't know how. Vin Smoke Sanj sends in a super chat and says, how did Pietro know Vision died when himself died before it happened? I think he's, like the kids, an unintentional creation of Wanda. Maybe, but why would Wanda, again, create a Pietro from a different universe that she doesn't know? I don't think so. I think there's something more going on there. I do. I think there's something more going on. Dean Dodd sent in a super chat and says, just throwing some support to my best YouTube friends. Well, thank you very much. At this point, I don't know what I look forward to more, the show or you guys in the after show. Yeah, I mean, Ann and John are a great duo, aren't they? I got to get in on that. I mean, I feel so lonely reading these questions after the fact. I feel like I should ask to get in on the climax. Maybe I'll ask if I can zing in there for the 8th episode. I would like that. Eric Robinson sent in a super chat and says, remember she gave Hayward a look when she trained the guns on him, so I'm willing to bet they had some kind of conversation. Maybe. You might be right about that. Hard to say. Hard to say. I think we're going to find out. There's going to be a flashback episode. I think someone said it earlier that it's going to be episode 8, and I think episode 8, and I think you're probably right. We're going to get many, many answers. James Germain sends in a super chat and said, could Blue Marvel make an appearance? Could, absolutely. But again, very comic book, very much of the MC, Marvel Comics universe, not MC, not the cinematic universe. I mean, you could, but then again, it's another layer of character that you have to explain to the audience that they don't know. So, maybe, and this show, man, all bets are off. I'm like, anything can happen. It's like the old Mickey Mouse Club surprise day. Anything can happen. Woo, woo, woo. And it usually does. That's how I feel about this show. Ted Erickson sends in a super chat and says, in the preview, Agnes asks if she is dead. She didn't say that in the episode. In this episode. Maybe in another episode. We never know. Ron H. says, I'm feeling for the idea that the universe is slowly starting to regenerate the stones, hence Wanda's rise in power. That's interesting, Ron. Could be. That could very well be. Could very well be. The stones are regenerating. I like that idea. The Good, the Bad, and the Classy sends in a super chat and says, I think that someone else has a hand in it. I do too. I personally think it's Nightmare after this episode, and I think Evan Peters himself is Nightmare. Could very well be, and that might explain how Nightmare knows the multiverse. But the reason I think there's someone else involved in creating WandaVision is because Agent Wu says people outside of WandaVision are unaware of people in the town. Yeah, I mean, that could very well be. I think we're going to get a big info dump and explanation of all this, and we'll see what actually is going to happen. But again, there's so many questions right now, and I don't know. But there's obviously some other external power. I don't know what it is or who it is or how it is or why it is, but I think we're going to definitely find that out. Ian Wendu sends in a super chat and says, the actor that played Richards from Fox's Fantastic Four playing an engineer, but not playing Richards. Yeah, I don't think so. Oh, so I don't know if you said that earlier or not, but somebody did. And I don't think they would do that. I think they're going to introduce, this is going to be, look, they've set this up. This has got to have a great payoff, or the audience is going to go, oh. So this payoff has got to be epic of who this person is. Epic. So that's why I think it's probably going to be Reed Richards or somebody of his ilk. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gentle beings, kind souls from across these 28 known galaxies, I have reached the end of these questions. I want to say thank you for spending the last 2 hours and almost 20 minutes with me as I answer these questions. I want to thank John Campea and Ann Campea for doing these shows that inspire so many of your questions. And amazing. I mean, it's amazing, you guys. And I want to especially thank everybody who has generously supported the channel. You guys are great. You make it all possible. Thank you so much. It's nice to know people like the work that we're all doing. And finally, I want to say thank you to John Campea himself for being a great collaborator, a great boss, and allowing me to do these chats, because I certainly have a fun time doing them. I hope you do too. So, my God, 3 more episodes of WandaVision left. Who knows what's going to happen? All I know is I'm there for it. I'm very excited to see what happens because, man, how crazy. It's just insane. Insanity. Well, And on that note, here I am, Robert Meyer Burnett, your Duke of Dope Discourse, saying to all of you, WandaVision. That was terrible. Maybe I shouldn't do that again. See you next week. Maybe.